right back to doing what I had been doing before. The only difference is instead of leaving a half of a chicken in the wood line, I left a full chicken in that wood line. Now, when I tell you what happened next, I will never ever forget. I mean it. On my desk bed, this will probably be my last memory. I had just closed the smoker, turned around, and see this skinny wolf standing on two legs next to a tree watching me. I started to get the feeling that it wanted me to see it, like it was revealing itself to me, because it stood there for a solid 2.5 minutes just looking. Now, talk about being shocked, surprised, and amazed. It was standing on two legs. But then somehow it takes two steps backwards into the shade of the trees and disappears. Now, to be clear with you, this wolf was great. I still should have been able to see it, but it was there and then it was gone. But in that 2 minutes, I realized something. That wolf had made a conscious decision, not only to show itself to me, but to protect me. And instantly, all the fear and anxiety just drained away. The following weekend, I'm out there smoking chickens again. I'm expecting to see it, right? Head on over there, put the chicken in the wood line, head back to the smoker, get it started, smoke the rest of the chickens. Head inside. I turn around looking, but it's not there. Head inside, get a glass of water, come back out, walk back over to the area, and that chicken's gone. Now, listen to me when I tell you this. I have not seen it since, but you could still feel them watching you, but not in like this creepy, paranoid, stalking kind of way. It's kind of like when you were a kid and you went to the park with your parents. You may have ran 20, 30, 40, 50 yards away from them. You're not even paying attention to your parents, but you just know, you can feel them watching you. Now, as I move around my property, it's a lot like that. I know it's watching over me. It all started with my mom fussing. Boy, didn't I tell you to take that damn trash out? Nah, my mom wasn't one of those new school moms. She was straight up old school. I'm talking about take off the belt and whoop your ass old school. So I put down the Nintendo, grab the trash, head outside, down the steps, into the parking lot, over to the dumpster, and in the direction of the dumpster on the far side of the lot. Now, as I'm walking along, I start to hear this breathing sound, but not a normal breathing like a man breathing. This sounded more like someone breathing and gargling water at the same time. And this fear jumps inside of me. I'm talking about the feeling that you need to run and get back inside of the house. So now I'm sprinting towards the dumpster, garbage bag held close to my chest, jumping, shooting that entire garbage bag like Kobe Bryant over the fence into the dumpster, landing on the ground, turning around, sprinting back in a direction towards my front door. And as I glance over to the wood line next to the apartment, that's when I see it. 8 feet tall, naked, pale skin, body like a man, no male genital.
at eerieexpeditions.com. The journey begins now. IamDarkwaters.com. Enter the realm of the paranormal and unknown if you dare. Here, the chilling true stories told in Dark Water's own gripping voice will keep you up at night. Tales of shadowy figures, strange creatures, and disturbing entities that lurk in darkness. Become a member for exclusive access to the full archive. Visit IamDarkwaters.com and remember to leave the light on.
I'm home alone when the power suddenly goes out. I light some candles, but quickly blow them out when I hear a chilling laugh echo through the darkness. Heavy footsteps grow closer as I scramble to hide. A hulking figure looms in the doorway, eyes glowing red. This monster has me trapped.
Imagine coming home after a 13-hour international flight from a business meeting where you had the highest expectations, but due to one of your team members, it was a colossal failure. If that's not bad enough, your boss, who's an anal retentive asshole, is holding your feet to the fire and placing the blame for the bad turnout of this meeting squarely on your shoulders. Oh, and I can't forget this bullshit. While you're there, your girlfriend tells you that she wants to see other people. Those were the circumstances surrounding my return to the United States, and all I wanted to do was just get home, sit on the sofa, turn on the TV, and drink a beer. However, after a 2-hour commute in Atlanta traffic, I arrive at my house only to notice that something is terribly wrong. See, my house was built in a brand new subdivision, surrounded by woods. It sits on 3.5 acres of land. And the first thing I notice is my wooden fence is leaning. Hopping out of the car and walking around to that side. Nope, it's not just leaning, it's broken. Okay, going into the fence where my 3 dogs should be, there is blood everywhere. Looks like a crime scene. Blood splatter all on the fence. My above ground pool is full of blood and fur, but I don't see any of my dogs anywhere. The wooden steps leading up to my little deck, which is next to the pool, are cracked and splintered. So now I'm standing there looking at all this, including the blood splatter all on the side of my house, thinking, now this is some bullshit. Going into the house, everything is fine. So I head up the street to my neighbor's house. Understand, this is my neighbor who I had paid $200 to feed and make sure my dogs had water and were okay while I was gone. And pause here in the story. I want you to remember, I'm fresh off the plane, tired, already in a bad mood. I'm trying to hold it all together. I knock on her door. He opens up and I'm like, so, did you see anything crazy going down at my house? Because my dogs are gone, the fence is down, and there's blood everywhere. Now get this. He replies to me saying, yes, I know what happened. A werewolf did it. Now remember, I already told you I was tired and moody. I wasn't in the mood for no foolishness. So I'm like, come on, dude. Really? What's going on? What happened to my dogs? That's when he says it again. A werewolf did it, and closes the front door. Then I go to my other neighbor. Understand, there's only 3 houses completely developed in this subdivision. I knock on her door. She looks at me through the window and doesn't even open the freaking door. So I go home, call the police. They come out, look around, and tell me it looks like a wild animal attacked my dog. No fucking shit, man. But what kind of wild animal knocks down a fence and leaves a murder scene like this? I'm telling you, my backyard literally looked like something from the movie Silent Hill. The police officer says he's not sure what could have done it, but he suspects that it probably was a bear. Takes a report and tells me to be careful, then leaves. So now, after flying all freaking night long, I'm outside trying to clean this mess. Nothing could be done about the fence. I go ahead and pull the plug on the pool, draining the water, take a bucket, add bleach, water, and soap, and scrub the blood, which is now drying off on the side of my house and my windows. Spray everything down because flies are now starting to swarm, and that's when I find the ear to one of my Labrador retrievers. Listen to me when I tell you, at this point in time, I'm just tired and pissed off. So I head inside, take off my clothes, and get into the bed, light a joint, and doze off to sleep. The next morning, I had to work and get my ass handed to me by my boss. And when I tell you emotionally, I'm distraught and just freaking over everything, like I'm over everything. So I head home early, take a Xanax, and fucking sit there on the sofa, contemplate my life, watching Netflix, eating comfort food until night falls. Get this, I head up to my bedroom, circling around the bed, glance out of the window, only to see what looks like these eyes looking at my house from the woods. These huge eyes are reflecting this red color, and I'm like, nah, man, hell no. This couldn't possibly be something standing out there looking at me in the woods. But then the eyes blink, and I'm like, holy crap, this is real. So I head outside with my flashlight and shotgun. Now pause for a moment because I need you to understand something. I didn't know anything about Dogman. And as far as I'm concerned, werewolves were things of movies. So I circle around the front side of the house, along the fence, shine a light into the woods, and nothing's there. So I'm thinking to myself, okay, now you're fucking hallucinating, you're stressed out. I rationalize everything away in my head. The only thing I could think of is maybe, just maybe, like he said, it's a bear out there. We definitely have black bears in Georgia, so I write it off, go inside, head to bed, trying to put my mind to rest so I can get back to work. However, the next night I realized something absolutely terrible was out there in the woods, way worse than any bear. And my neighbor, who I asked to watch my dog, was the problem. Because about 9 p.m. that night, I hear shooting. Not like handgun shooting, but rifle shooting. I grab my shotgun, head out of the front door, into my front yard, and realize that the shooting is coming from his house. And understand, like I've explained to you before, it's only the 3 houses back there. So now I'm heading over to his house, knocking on his front door. His wife comes to the door, hair all over the place, robe on. The woman looked like she just dodged the 18-wheeler on the freeway. Her eyes are wide open, and she's like, it's back, it's back. She literally pulls me into the house, pushing me through the living room, into the kitchen, through the back door, which leads to their raised patio. And there he was on the edge of the patio, shining a light and shooting into the trees. Now looking into those trees, there's what I would describe as a wolf man jumping down from the tree. And that's when my neighbor lays it all on me, saying, that's what killed them dogs. He puts down his rifle, picks up 2 freaking grenades, pulls the pin on one, chucks it into the woods, pulls the pin on the other one. I'm like, oh shit, I'm expecting an explosion, shit flying all over the place. Instead, it's this loud, deafening bang sound. And while my ears were still ringing from the first bang, I hear another one. Hands over my ears, he's now pulling me back into the house. I can't hear shit he's saying. I'm confused. His wife is standing there trembling. I'm reading his lips as he's mouthing, it won't be back for a while. Listen to me when I tell you, it took damn near a solid hour before I could even hear right. And that's when this man tells me the truth. That creature showed up and he started shooting at it. And he decided to take my 3 dogs out into the woods with him looking for it. But he couldn't find it. Early that morning, he heard it at my house slaughtering and killing my dog. So he went up the road to scare it off. But by the time he got there, the damage was already done. His wife chimes into the conversation saying, why in the hell did you shoot at it in the first place? I told you not to shoot. According to her, she was the one who was in the kitchen and saw it walking on the backside of their fence. Its shoulders were above their 8-foot wooden fence. She tells him, anything that fucking big, you need to leave it alone unless it messes with you. Now, the two of them are arguing. He's saying it's my job to defend the house. She's screaming, and it dawns on me. Hold on. You got my dogs killed, got my fence broken, caused all these problems because you think you some kind of fucking werewolf hunter. So I tell them, listen, we're going to have to do something about this shit. I'm calling the police. That's when they tell me they had already called the police. So I tell them, let's call animal control. So we call the hotline. A guy answers, and I tell him the truth, straight up. My neighbor and I just finished shooting at a walking wolf. And the man on the phone goes silent. I mean silent long enough for me to have to say, hello, are you still there? Then the man says, yes, sir, I'm here. What's your address? I tell him the address, and then I ask him, hey, man, what should we do? He says, did you hit it? I'm like, shit, I don't know. But what I do know is it was big. It was so big, I don't think you could really miss it. That's what this man tells us. The best advice he could give us is to stay in the house and lock the doors and don't leave the house until morning. Quite logically, my question to him is like, okay, so is somebody coming or what's going on? That's when he tells me someone will be there as soon as possible. Well, as soon as possible turns out to be the next morning at 7 a.m. because there's a knock at the door. Keep in mind, I have not been back up the street to my house. I spent the night in their house. This man, not dressed in any ranger outfit, no police uniform, nothing like that, knocks on the door and says, you called about a wild animal. And I tell him, listen, this ain't no wild animal. This is a fucking wolf that walks around, jumps from tree to tree and lands on the ground and killed my fucking dogs. That's when he asks us to escort him to the area. So we walk him around the house to the backside of the fence and into the woods. And this man tells us to go back inside while he takes a look. Listen, the dude walked back there in the woods for like 30 minutes, comes back to the front side of the house, gets his cell phone out of his car and makes a call, and then leaves. No closure, no goodbye, no I found something, didn't tell us shit, just leaves. Now get this, after he's gone, we all realized that we asked him his name and he never even responded. He just straight blew past the question. So we didn't even know this man's name. Now, I'm fucking over all this shit. So I go home, get dressed, go to work late. When I come back home that evening, the road that leads to my house is blocked. There's a guy standing there and he tells me that I can't go home, that a hotel has been arranged for me. I'm like, nah, fuck that. I'm going home, my man. Like, I don't know what's going on, but I need to go home. That's when he pulls out a Homeland Security badge, flashes his gun, and says, listen, take this card, call this number, go to the hotel. You can come home in the morning. Trust me, this is better for you. Now, I'm sitting in the car in front of him. I dial this number. There is silence on the line for like 5 seconds. What I mean by silence is the fucking phone doesn't ring. It's just silent. Then this woman says, Mr. Lewis, Mr. Lewis, a hotel room has been arranged for you at the Hilton Suites. Gives me the address and says, sorry for the inconvenience. You can return home in the morning. When I get to the hotel, my neighbors, whose house I had just spent the night in, are sitting in the lobby, along with the other neighbor who refused to open her door. That's when I learned that the man returned, telling all of them that they needed to leave. So all of us sit there discussing this shit for the next few hours and finally come to the conclusion that there's nothing we can do. But we make an agreement that we're all going back home at the same time, 7 a.m. in the morning. So get this, the next morning we leave all at the same time. Our little caravan rolling down the road. When we get there, the roadway to our house is open. Pulling up to my house, the fence has been fixed. Going into my yard, the pool has been replaced. There is even new sod down in my backyard. And get this, my house has been fucking pressure washed. Now, walking up the street to my neighbor's house, the trees on the backside of his property had been cut and cleared. And get this, after that one night, there was nothing. Not a fucking sound. It was almost like every creature, animal in the woods around that subdivision was freaking gone. Listen, my neighbors and I have discussed this extensively. We really have. And we all have come to the same conclusion, that whatever that thing was, Dogman, werewolf, whatever you want to call it, I don't care. Whatever it was, it belonged to the government. And they came and they got it. And that's why they repaired my house. That's why they cleared the trees. That's why they did everything that they did, was because it was theirs.
Simple Jack, yeah, you went all out on that one, huh? You did. Really swung for the fences.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thanks. Yeah. Yeah, it was an intense experience. You know, I just did the work. Watched a lot of retarded people. Spent time with them, observed them. Watched all the retarded stuff they did. But, you know, there were times when I was doing Jack that I actually felt retarded, like really retarded.
Damn.
In a weird way, I had to sort of just free myself up to believe that it was okay to be stupid or dumb.
To be a moron.
Yeah.
To be moronical.
Exactly. To be a moron.
An imbecile.
Yeah.
Like the dumbest motherfucker that ever lived. Stupid ass Jack.
By the end of the whole thing, I was like, wait a minute, you know? I flushed so much out, how am I going to jumpstart it up again? It's just like...
Yeah.
Right?
You was farting in bathtubs, laughing your ass off.
Yeah. I mean, it was just really it was crazy.
It's like working with mercury. You're serious? You don't know. Everybody knows you never go full retard.
What do you mean?
You went full retard, man. Never go full retard.
My journey down the path of Dogman discovery started with listening to interviews. My favorite interview is Fight with the Dogman. I was a teenager when I first heard this and been fascinated ever since, listening to everyone's Dogman encounters across YouTube. So I started doing my own research. And on my 21st birthday, I asked my mom to finance an expedition to this graveyard, some coordinates I found on Facebook. We sat down and talked about my obsession. My mother, who's a veterinarian, said that these creatures couldn't possibly exist. But nonetheless, she sponsored my trip. Now listen, this was my plan. I wanted to get footage, start my own YouTube channel, and get my mom to review and comment on the footage as a veterinarian. Hell, I thought it was a neat idea. Nobody was doing it, so I run with it. Head down to Alabama. I'm there 3 days and find nothing. The first day, I'm out there walking around looking for evidence, but I don't see anything. I come back that night, and yes, it's freaky and creepy in the cemetery, but there's nothing going on. The next night, I'm out there about 9:30 p.m. Now, I didn't know they had security at this graveyard, but I'm running to the security guard, old black man, and he is pissed off. He says, "You white motherfuckers always coming out here fucking around robbing these graves. Get your ass the fuck out of here before I shoot you." Imagine me standing there with my hands up, flashlight shining in my eyes, saying, "Listen, sir, I'm not here to rob any graves. I just came out here to do some paranormal investigations." But clearly, he had some very bad encounters in his graveyard, because he says, "I don't give a shit what you out here looking for. Your ass needs to leave right fucking now." He lowers the light out of my eyes and I get a good look at him. 6'4", bald headed with these moles on his face. He's now shining the light in the direction of the exit. So slowly I start walking that way. And he says, "I don't even understand what the hell you think you're going to find out here. Why in the hell would you bring your ass out here?" I stop, turn, and say again, "Sir, I'm not out here to bother anybody's graves. I'm just out here to do some paranormal investigation. You know, ghost hunting, werewolves, monsters, Bigfoots." This look comes over his face as he scans my body up and down. And I guess he came to the realization that I wasn't a threat. So I show him the video footage I have. Me just walking around the graveyard, not touching anything, not doing anything. That's when he literally grabs me by my arm and begins to drag my body over by this grave and points to it and says, So you've been out here all night long, recording and filming, and you didn't see who or what dug this grave up right here. I tell him, sir, yes, I've been out here wandering around, but I wasn't messing with no graves, and I didn't see anybody else out here messing with any graves. Listen, I came down here to get evidence of Dogman. So I wasn't going to let this man deter me. So now I'm trying to talk him into seeing things my way. And so I started questioning him. Well, sir, have you ever seen anything weird out here or anything crazy? And he says, yeah, I've seen some weird, crazy things out here. Well, that's all I'm looking for. I'm not here to bother anything. I'm not here to bother anybody. Quite frankly, if I see what I'm looking for, I'm probably going to turn around and run. Is there any kind of way you can work with me? I'm here for another night. I just need to come back tomorrow night and do some investigations. Listen, if I don't see anything, then I'm out of here. But if I do and I catch it on camera, cool. But I promise you I won't do anything. I will even come back out here and keep you company as you work, just so I can do my investigation. He looks me up and down and says, I tell you what, son, it's definitely kind of creepy out here and lonely at night. Meet me out here tomorrow at 7 o'clock and we'll see what we can do. Listen to me. I'm fucking excited. Now I'm going to have access to the graveyard where there's been documented Dogman activity, and I'm not going to get arrested by the sheriff, and this guy ain't going to shoot me in my ass. So I'm floating on cloud 9. The following evening, I get there at 6:30. He pulls up at 7 o'clock, opens the door to his truck and says, get in. Now I'm thinking we're going to be in this graveyard, but no. Turns out he's responsible for 5 graveyards in the area. So we end up riding around from one graveyard to the next Now we're on our way from the 3rd to the 4th graveyard, working our way back to the original one where we met at, when he says, you know, I'm not sure exactly what it is you're looking for out here, but maybe I could just tell you a little bit about it. So I start questioning him. Well, can you tell me about some of the creepy and weird things you've seen out here? He says, yeah, that's why I was so pissed off at you. Just the other night, I was out here riding around doing my rounds, and I pull up in a graveyard, and I see 2 kids laying on top of a grave. Girl is on top of this boy, riding him cowgirl style. That's why I say you white motherfuckers are nasty. I don't even know why you would be out here doing something like that. Anyway, I get out my truck, walk up on them with the flashlight, shine a light on them, because I'm pissed. They out here with that black magic, sex magic. You know, when they make love on them graves like that, it's called soul sucking. So they out there making love on the grave, soul sucking. I shine a light on them, and when they look at me, both of them got jet black eyes. When I tell you jet black eyes, I mean complete, total black eyes. Scared the shit out of me. I pull my weapon, they hop up and take off running. Listen, this awkward silence kind of takes over as I'm trying to figure out what the hell he's talking about, and you can tell he was reliving seeing that exact thing. That silence is broken by him saying, well, what exactly is it you think you're going to find out here? Now, this is when things take a turn for the worse, because I tell him, well, I'm out here looking for Dogman. He says, Dogman? I ain't never heard of no Dogman. I tell him, you know, upright walking wolves, werewolves. I think here in the South, y'all call it the rougarou. Lord Jesus, why did I say that? Because he pulls over to the side of the road, slamming the brakes, squares his body up in the truck with me and says, why in the fuck would you come here looking for the rougarou? You see, this is the shit that I'm talking about. You gonna come out here and you gonna mess with them things. I already got enough problems with them digging up graves and taking bones. But no, you want to come out here and you gonna rile them things up, and then you gonna go back home to where the hell you came from, and guess who gonna have to deal with them while they pissed off? Me. I'm gonna have to deal with the pissed off rougarou because you out here chasing and trying to take pictures of it. Nope, not having it. This what the fuck you gonna do. You finna get your little narrow ass back in your vehicle and carry it back to wherever the hell you came from, boy. You understand me? Now, at first he's screaming at me, and that's scary enough, but then he starts to whisper, and he says, see, if you come around here one more time and get them rougarous upset, and they get to chasing me, slashing my tires, trying to get me, and I see you, I'm gonna kill you. Sure enough, I'm gonna pull my gun and I'm gonna kill you. Now understand, the whole time he's talking to me, he's got his hand on his gun.
And I'm getting the impression that this man is not playing whatsoever. Then he whips a U-turn, starts flying down the road, takes me back to the original cemetery where we were, and lets me out right by my vehicle, saying, "Nah, son, if you bring your ass back, I'm going to shoot you. If I don't shoot you and I can't get to you, I'm going to call the sheriff and they're going to arrest your ass. So I'm telling you, son, don't bring your ass back over here. Ain't nothing over here for you. All you going to do is rile that rougarou up and it's going to lose its mind. And you not prepared for what's going to happen when that rougarou loses his mind. So what I want you to do is get the hell on. I want you to get the hell on right now. Listen to me when I tell you this. I didn't have a choice but to leave. Looking in this man's eyes, he was clearly capable of following through with his threat and shooting me. And I think he wanted to do it right then and there. So I got back in my vehicle and I drove home. Didn't get one shred of evidence of a dogman whatsoever. But I did learn a lesson. It's a little bit more complicated than just going to a spot looking for dogman. There's these other variables involved in the equation, like him.
Dark Waters is not your typical fast food joint for paranormal stories. It's a 5-star establishment. Each story is meticulously prepared, much like an award-winning chef crafting a meal for discerning guests. The decision to revisit past episodes isn't about recycling content. Rather, it's an opportunity to savor the richness and depth of these tales. Just as a chef might bring back a beloved dish, these reruns allow listeners to relish the intricacies and nuances of the stories. It's about delivering a premium experience, ensuring that every narrative is savored like a fine dining experience rather than consumed in haste. So when you encounter a rerun, consider it an encore presentation of a masterpiece, inviting you to rediscover the flavors and thrills that make Dark Waters a paranormal feast for the senses.
The Dark Waters channel is for entertainment purposes only. Although information in these stories can be traced back to relevant and true sources, Dark Waters strongly discourages its viewers, listeners, and subscribers from visiting the site of incidents and encounters discussed or revealed on the show. In other words, we will not be held responsible if you are attacked by a dogman, molested by a bigfoot, bitten by vampires, chased by chupacabras, abducted by aliens, accosted by the men in black, investigated or arrested by the local law enforcement, CIA, FBI, NSA, EPA, BLM, or another alphabet group, whether on U.S. soil or abroad. Thank you for tuning in and enjoy the show.
America is home to a centuries-old legend. A hominid creature, known by many names: Sasquatch, Yeti, the Woodsman, and the most popular name of all, Bigfoot. Tonight, on the Dark Waters channel, we travel into the world of Bigfoot, where Bigfoot truth seekers combine forces to share stories and encounters from around the world. Tonight, we proudly present the Bigfoot Bonanza.
My farm is located just south of Shreveport, Louisiana, and I inherited it from my grandfather 5 years ago. Since that day, I've grown the business to another level. One of the only commercial farms here that does more business than mine is Mahaffrey. And Mahaffrey is one of the powerhouses of Louisiana farm to food industry. Here on my farm, I grow everything: pasture-raised chickens, pork, beef, vegetables. I employ 32 people and have over $4 million worth of equipment here. Needless to say, I was very nervous when all this activity began to happen. It started about 3 months ago when Jordan, my guy who manages everything to do with poultry, came into the house. He had this weird look on his face. Jordan is responsible for making sure everything goes well with my chickens, that the eggs are collected on time, that they get out and get exercise. He told me that as he let the chickens out for the day, he was walking around the fence line and noticed something strange. He said that he saw these tracks that looked canine, and that the tracks circled the perimeter of the fence and then led back into the woods. According to Jordan, these tracks were huge, and whatever it was must have been a big dog on all fours. Standing in front of me, Jordan was clearly disturbed by these prints and insisted that I come take a look. So we drove out to the spot near the chickens and walked the fence line. Initially, when he said big dog prints, I thought he was just talking about a big dog. But these prints were massive. This was like nothing I'd ever seen around my farm before. I now understood why he was so worried, but there was absolutely nothing I could do. And being crazy enough to try and track an animal that size into the woods, just looking for trouble. A few days passed and Jordan forgot about the prints, and I turned my attention to this upcoming inspection that I had with the Department of Agriculture. You see, 6 months ago when I was going through my divorce, I fell way behind on paperwork. And luckily, I was able to talk to the inspector into giving me a re-inspection, allowing me more time to submit the proper documents. It was 3 a.m. in the morning, the day of the inspection, and I had been working all night to get the reports finished and the paperwork filled out for the DOA when I heard a ruckus out at the cow pasture. See, my farm is wired for video and sound, so I went to my little video monitoring room to see what the deal was. What I saw on that camera, I couldn't believe. My cattle were all herded up against the western fence line, 300 of them, huddled together in fear. And at the eastern side of the fence was some kind of creature. Its eyes glistened this green color on the camera, and it was huge. This thing was moving in and out of the view of the camera as it would back up to the wood line and then charge the fence. Based on its thing size, it could have easily jumped over the fence or even ran through it. But it was like it wanted to scare the cattle. It was toying with them. Trying to figure out what to do, I decided to grab my cell phone and I opened up the video app that allowed me to monitor the cameras mobily. Then I went to my closet and I grabbed my shotgun. This creature, whatever it was too big to confront. But I figured if I just went out back and fired a few rounds into the air, it would leave like any other animal would. Boy, was I wrong. I stepped out of the back door with my shotgun, pointed into the air, and fired while I was looking at the camera. This thing stopped, turned its head in the direction of the gunfire, then it starts heading in my direction. Only then did I get a full look at this thing as it jumped the fence and ran through the cow pasture coming straight towards me. I don't know if you ever seen that movie Underworld, when those creatures are running on all fours. That's exactly what I saw. It was unreal. I rushed back into the house, locking the door and headed into my office. It was now 3:35 a.m., and I would only be alone for another 10 minutes. The morning crew of workers, including Jordan, would be pulling up any minute. As I sat there with my shotgun, I watched this thing circle the house, sniffing, and somehow it pinpointed the very room that I was in. That's when I heard the scratching and banging on the walls. I can't express to you how terrified I was. For the next 9 minutes, all I thought about was that I was going to die. This creature was going to break down the wall and eat me. I looked at the camera as this thing on all fours kept banging against the wall with its shoulders over and over and over again. And the scratching. Oh my God, it was something out of a nightmare. Looking back on it all now, this thing had to be trying to intimidate or scare me. Because it didn't make sense. If it wanted into the house, it could have just ran through one of the glass doors or broken down the front door. It seemed like it was forever, but finally my watch beat 3:45, and I could hear the trucks begin to pull in the parking lot out front. Jordan and his crew were always the first there in the morning. I watched on camera as this thing looked directly at the light of the trucks. Then with speed and agility, unlike anything I'd ever seen before, it ran off towards the back of the farm. Jordan and his men were walking around the side of the house when I came out the back door. My face must have given it all away because Jordan's first question was, "Did you see it?" All I could do was nod my head yes. That's when he told me about the Dogman and how it had been seen all over the United States, especially in Louisiana. Jordan had me listen to several shows, and that's how I found you. We've been using the powder that your guys recommended and have gone as far as to maintain a perimeter around our farm with it. I haven't seen this creature since we made the changes. However, I'm starting to hear rumors that other farms in the area are having similar problems, except for they've lost chickens and cattle. I'm even hearing about more than one of these things appearing at the same time. I hope this is my one and only time ever seeing Dogman. I'll never forget my first time seeing a Dogman. To Black Southern Baptist, and I can never forget that day. It was at a revival service. Back in those days, Christian revivals were held outdoors, inside tents. And to paint a clear picture for you, if you can imagine being outside on a hot summer day
with a huge white tent set up, rows and rows and rows of chairs, a makeshift stage, and people were heavy in the worship. This is my first time going to a revival, although I've been dragged in and out of church every Sunday my entire life. I thought it was interesting. The way people worship out of the church was completely different than the way they worshiped in church. It was much more intense. And I could never forget the sound of that day. The revival had started at about 3 o'clock and had gone on for hours. And right as the sun began to set and the pastor started doing the altar call to save souls, something weird started to happen. From my position on the right-hand side of the back row, I started to hear the strange sound coming from the woods, but I wasn't sure what it was. You could hear it faintly, just above the sound of the singing. Then as the singing and the clapping stopped, I could hear it clearer. Something was growling, and growling loudly. Initially, I thought I was hearing things until my grandmother started looking in the same direction as the sound. Then others in the congregation began to look that way too. And out from the wood line stepped something I had never seen before and hoped to never see again. This thing was massive, 9 feet tall, with the huge head of a wolf. Its fur was black, jet black, and its upper body had more muscles than anything I had ever seen. It just stood there, showing its teeth and growling. The people in the congregation finally caught on to it and began to run. The pastor grabbed his Bible and began to pray, repeatedly saying, "Get ye behind me, Satan. Get ye behind me, Satan." Until one of the deacons grabbed him by his collar and pulled him, yanking him off the stage. Everyone ran back to their cars and fled the area. I never knew exactly what that was that I saw until I heard you on Coast to Coast AM talking about the Dogman. I'm sure that not only did I see a Dogman, but 200 other people.
When I was told by my friend that you were not critical of him when he told you about his Dogman experience, at first I was skeptical. However, after speaking with you, I realized that you are the real deal. This encounter I'm going to share with you can be verified by my 19-year-old son. Both my son and I are what you call Cajuns here in Louisiana. I spend the majority of my free time hunting and fishing in the bayous of southeast Louisiana. Per our agreement, I am not disclosing exactly where this happened. I still have to live and work in this area, but I will do my best to paint a clear picture of the surrounding. It was early August and my son and I had spent the entire day fishing. I have an 18-foot Alumacraft boat with a Yamaha 40 motor. On the front I mounted a trolling motor. It is a Minnesota Cota 45-pound thrust battery-powered setup. The max speed on this motor with 2 people on my boat is 12 miles per hour through calm waters. It was just turning dark when our encounter began. The Yamaha 40 motor on my boat was noticed also. My son and I always tried to get out of the bayous before dark. As expected, the Yamaha 40 was stalling and slow to crank up. As I pressed the ignition, she wouldn't turn over. We didn't want to flood the engine, so instead we began using the trolling motor to travel along the bayou to head home. It was no big deal, we had done this many of times. It did mean that a 20-minute drive through the bayou would now take an hour. We were rounding a bend near the levee when everything went quiet. My son brought it to my attention. "Papa, listen," he said. "Everything is so quiet." There was not a sound, no birds, crickets, no fish splashing. The only sound was the steady hum of the trolling motor. In order for you to understand what happens next, I have to explain the area we were in. The levee is for storm surge protection. It's 12 to 15 feet tall in spots along this waterway. The levee is on our left-hand side. On our right-hand side is primary forested wetland. The bayou.
Today I got a call.
She didn't say when, she didn't say when, but at least I got her on the phone.
What's up, ladies and gentlemen? It's your boy Dog Waters with another episode of Out of Left Field. And for those of you who are new to the Dog Waters channel, to explain to you what Out of Left Field is, it is a storytelling format that I came up with that's real free flowing. It's very free flowing. It's not like the highly produced stories with the music. What's up, ladies and gentlemen? It's your boy Dog Waters. I'm back with the entire story this time. But before I play this story, we need to address a few things and do a little housekeeping because there's a lot of new people that's coming, and that's cool. You new here, you're welcome. But again, and I'm gonna keep on reminding you, the new people. I gotta bring you up to speed. Number one, this is not the place for you. If you have thin skin, this is not the place for you. Number two, when it comes to beef and people popping off at the mouth, I handles my business on my own. Don't run around saying
stuff. I see that you are back to swim in the dark waters, but I am warning you, Dark Waters is very angry today. I went to go and check on him, and his eyes were fiery red. You see, some of you have been running your mouth, but it's better for me to let him say it than I say it to you. Yes, follow me, we will go find him. Dark Waters, what is going on with you? Your nose is flared wide like a bull. Your eyes are fiery red. What has happened to you?
Address something. If you've been listening to this channel for a while and you pay attention to my community tab, then you know the type of stuff that I talk about. Like those are people who actually swim in the dark waters. They're not visitors. So the other day, I
crave adventure off the beaten path. At EerieExpeditions.com, we take you on guided tours of the world's most haunted, cursed, and mysterious locations. Visit castles, asylums, murder sites, and more on our one-of-a-kind excursions into the dark unknown. Meet expert guides and use state-of-the-art equipment to hunt for paranormal activity. Voyage into the eerie and macabre at EerieExpeditions.com. The journey begins now.
I had never heard of Dogman. Never thought about a werewolf until this day. And I never want to see anything like that again. My girlfriend and I at the time were having problems. You know how some women can be. When they need attention, instead of saying so, she liked to nag me. And my mother used to nag me when I was a kid. Aggravated the hell out of me. So I leave out of the back door to smoke a cigarette. I'm standing there. And you know how the trees sound when the wind is blowing, right? Leaves shaking, rustling. Well, I'm standing there in the darkness, hearing that. And because I'm so damn aggravated with her, it takes me a few minutes to realize that there's absolutely no wind blowing. It's a full moon outside. There's no way of mistaking it whatsoever. Then, that's when I hear this thud, like something heavy landing on the ground, accompanied by a growl. Holy shit. What the hell is that?
I will never forget when God showed me a person placing a curse on me. They went to a graveyard, found a headstone with my name on it, took graveyard dirt from the grave, and cast a spell with the intent to kill me. Why? Because their feelings got hurt. The funny thing about casting spells is that a curse without a cause cannot stand. So now, this guy at my job goes around spreading rumors, turning people against me, trying to create a cause for his curse to work. I pray to Jesus, and he says, "Do nothing, be still." This goes on and gets worse and worse, everything to try and get me to fight, be offended, so his curse could land, but nothing. Jesus says to me, "Son, I paid the price for your sins, so he is not cursing you. He is cursing me. I will deal with him."
Truth is out there.
It is one of the world's greatest mysteries, Scotland's legendary Loch Ness Monster. So does the lake creature actually exist? Well, if you ask one man, he'll tell you it is in fact no myth.
Every day is flaunted in front of your face.
Hundreds of people in the valley say they are hearing voices in their heads.
You just choose to ignore it.
Belief can be a powerful force. No one knows that better than the people who are sure they've seen Bigfoot.
Real accounts.
He says he knows who's playing mind games.
Rogue government officials that are sponsoring this, also corrupt business officials, and private citizens.
From real people.
Hundreds of people turned out tonight for the unveiling of a very controversial statue.
Yeah, it really is. The Satanic Temple of Detroit revealed the 1-ton bronze statue.
It's time for you to take a swim.
I'm just excited to see my Lord and Savior Baphomet represented in such glorious Italian stone. I do hope his eyes gaze upon me, and that my allegiance is recognized.
In the dark waters.
The Dark Waters channel is for entertainment purposes only. Although information in these stories can be traced back to relevant and true sources, Dark Waters strongly discourages its viewers, listeners, and subscribers from visiting the site of incidents and encounters discussed or revealed on the show. In other words, we will not be held responsible if you are attacked by a dogman, molested by a bigfoot, bitten by vampires, chased by chupacabras, abducted by aliens, accosted by the men in black, investigated or arrested by the local law enforcement, CIA, FBI, NSA, EPA, BLM, or another alphabet group, whether on U.S. soil or abroad. Thank you for tuning in and enjoy the show.
When I was 24 years old, I got a job working as a bouncer at a strip club. And I would always get off work real late. And by late, I mean I found myself getting home at 4:30, 5 a.m. Now, since I live with my parents, I moved into the basement. That way I could use the basement door to get direct access to my bedroom and not wake them up every time I came home. I had gotten off work at about 4 a.m., drove home, and I remember it being quiet as I pulled up outside of the house. The only sound I could really hear was the squeaking of the front right wheel on my truck. Opened the door and got out. And as I went to close the door to the truck, I heard this guttural growling sound coming from the passenger side of my vehicle. When I looked over, I saw this 9 to 10 foot tall creature standing in a creek in front of this old oak tree. And I couldn't see every detail because it was dark, but what I could see was this kind of glimmering glisten of green eyes. And also I could see a silhouette. It was massive. Then this thing growled. Man, I took off, running towards the basement door and jumped into it. Didn't use a key. I broke the door and the lock and everything else. Closed it behind me and moved my dresser door in front of it. The next thing I know, I hear this thing outside throwing shit. My dad's barbecue grill, chairs, the umbrella, tables. It was like this creature was having a temper tantrum. My parents came running downstairs, asking me what did I do? And when my dad looked out the basement window and saw this thing, he didn't seem surprised at all. He just told us to be quiet and it'll go away. It would pace left to right, then stop. Stand there, rocking and swaying back and forth, looking at the house. Next, we heard this loud yell coming from far, far away, way louder than possible for any human. And then the creature took off back into the woods. I begged my dad to call the police, but he said no. He said they would only make us seem like a bunch of fools, so we let it be. Now, my mom doesn't like being at home alone anymore, and she's begging my dad to sell the property. But Dad won't. He grew up here. In 2003, I was driving along Highway 190 in Louisiana, just outside of Reeves. It was early in the morning, 6:30 a.m. The sun had just risen. You know how it is when that sun shines right in your eyes through the windshield and almost blinds you? That's how it was. And so I was letting my sun visor down. And I noticed something standing up ahead on the side of the road. It looked like a big person. And with me being partially blinded by the sun, I slowed down, not wanting to hit a pedestrian. But as I passed by and got a better look at this thing, this was no human. Its shoulders were as wide as my driver's side door on my Honda Accord. and it was now walking away from the roadway down into a ditch. The craziest thing was, even though it was down in the ditch, its head was still above the roof of my car. I sped off because I didn't want nothing to do with that thing. I drove on for about a mile, stopped and got out, and decided to walk down into the ditch to see exactly how deep it was. I took 2.5 strides downhill to get to the bottom. Now, I didn't have a measuring tape with me or anything, but I say that this ditch was at least 5 to 6 feet below the road surface. That would have made this thing 12 to 13 feet tall. Once I realized that, I got the hell out of there. I can't tell you how many times I've warned people about going up into the hills and hollows behind my house. Where I live in North Arkansas, there are a lot of strange creatures in these woods. But about 6 miles at the back of my property, it's a clan of Bigfoot. Me, I've known about the woodsmen my whole life. My granddaddy used to warn us about them. Tell us stuff like if we were not careful, they were going to get us and eat us. He and I would go hunting and kill deer. He would dress the deer and leave the rest in the woods for them. You see, my granddad had a good understanding of these creatures, and he passed that down to me. It was not too long ago that one of them Bigfoot research groups came by my house asking questions. They wanted to know if they could go to the backside of the property and search for Bigfoot. Now, I tried to warn them. I told them that clan of Bigfoot in the woods was aggressive. They ain't like outsiders in the area. That these things didn't even like me back in the woods, and I've been around them since I was a little boy. But they didn't listen. They asked for permission to park on my property and head into the woods. I figure, oh hell, if you're gonna go out into the woods, I should make some money. So I charged them $200. Following morning, they came back, a total of 7 men. And it was funny. You could tell none of them really had any outdoors experience. They had on these fancy backpacks, and some of them had on shorts. They looked like a bunch of city boys taking their first trip out into the wilderness. I remember exactly what time it was. It was about 8:30 when they pulled up. As I sat on the porch watching them, I figured it wouldn't last long. Hell, most people back there don't last long. You see, it'd take them about 45 minutes to walk into the first area where you could find the signs of Bigfoot. You'll see tree breaks, tree structures, all kind of crazy stuff. If that didn't scare them, when they ran into Big Daddy, he would. Big Daddy's the name I came up for the Bigfoot I saw in them woods back there. He's 11 feet tall, every bit of 800, 900 pounds. Now, Big Daddy is the alpha. And it was many times that he escorted me out of the woods, throwing tree limbs at me. Other times he'll just show himself to me. And I can tell you it's a frightening experience to look at an 11-foot tall, 800-pound creature staring down at you. So those cupcakes headed into them woods didn't stand a chance. Right about 11:30, I'm standing in the kitchen fixing me a sandwich when I start to hear screaming and hollering. And I know it's them. I couldn't help but laugh. I walked out of the back door, and there they were, running to their vehicle. One car drove straight past the side of my house and onto the road, damn near hitting a tree. And the other one stopped right at my back porch. This was the guy who paid me the $200. When he gets out, he don't have shoes on. And his arm, it's got a big gash in it. He's got his t-shirt wrapped around him. And he's in shock. I didn't think they were real. I didn't think them things was real, is what he said. The other 2 men in the car looked petrified. Damn city slickers, I couldn't help but smile. I invite the guy in the house to try and help patch him up a little bit before he can go to the hospital. That's when he tells me, about 20 to 35 minutes into the woods, him and his friends come upon this tree structure. Now, these idiots decide that they're going to push it down and knock it over. And then this guy, the one who's bleeding, he decides he's going to take a piss on top of the logs. After that, they move forward into the woods about 800 feet or so. That's when they started hearing noises coming from all angles surrounding them. He said then a tree fell over right behind him, and it separated him from the rest of his friends. The other 6 guys got scared, started running back, leaving him behind. And as he tried to climb over this huge tree to get back towards his friends, then another tree fell, almost hitting him. Finally, he thought to himself to look to see where the trees were coming from, and that's when he saw it. His description was 12 feet tall, black and muscular. He said had hair on certain places, but sparse hair on his chest. And I knew from the minute he started, he was talking about Big Daddy. He said as he stood there in fear, it reached down, picked up a rock the size of his hand, He just knew it was about to throw it at his head, so he started to run. That's when he felt this painful impact on his right arm. He saw blood, and he continued to run out of there. Now, I gave this guy a few gauzes and some tape, told him he needed to head up to the hospital and get that stitched up as soon as possible. Then I escorted him out of my house. These clowns had went up there and did some of the most stupid stuff I'd ever heard of. And I didn't want them in my house because I didn't want Big Daddy coming over here looking for them. I don't know, maybe people are hearing about my property on the internet, but I had about 5 other groups of people come out this way. Each and every one I warned about Big Daddy. Then I charge them money to park on my property. Out of the last few groups, only one is lasting the entire day back there in the woods. And when night fell, them boys came running out of there like bats out of hell. My best advice for anybody who's encountering Bigfoot or going into the area is give them the same respect that you would want to have. Attention all members of the Dark Waters family. I'm proud to announce to you guys that the Dark Waters channel t-shirts are now for sale. Many of you have asked me before, hey Dark Waters, why don't you have a Patreon account? Or why don't you do Super Chat? That's because I believe in earning my profits. I don't believe in taking any donations or taking any gifts. So if you really want to support me and the Dark Waters channel and the effort that I'm putting forward, the best way to do so is to buy the t-shirts and the products that will be rolling out over the next couple of months. I'm very excited about the products that are going to be hitting the market. Get your Dark Waters t-shirt today while supplies last. It's only $25. That includes shipping and handling.
Man, you're not going to believe this. I'm leaving Club Whispers. It's about 3 o'clock in the morning. Driving down Diamond Road, right? When my car stops. I mean, just straight up sputters and kills. So now I get outside of the car. I got the hood open. I'm checking around trying to see if it's the battery, figure out what's going on. That's when this dude comes flying down the street. I'm talking about smoking down the street. Slams on his brakes, pulls over right, and I'm telling him like, yo, man, I might need a jump. I could use some help. I'm glad you pulled over. But he puts his car in reverse and hits the gas. Seconds later, I dive out of the way and he slams into the front of my car. I'm laying there on the ground when he peeks his head out and says, fuck you, Thomas. I can't stand you. And I'm like, bro, who is Thomas?
First of all, it couldn't be your fault. When this life of mine would fall, it will always be my call. Trying to throw this shade on me, like they all hate on me. Don't bring that rage on me. Why they throwing shade on me, like they ashamed of me. I thought, what age are we? It's warm outside, and we all want shine. Let you know about it in the city, cause stay in the crib this time. Whoa, got pics on the way like a vacay. Shoot photo with the AK. Got friends by my side, trying to have a great day. And I wonder why they throw shades. Yeah, but it's all on me. Let them roam free like a
Now, you know, in every hood, all around the country, there's some wild ninjas. I'm talking about next level, crazy, wild. See, down in Houston, where I'm from, that wild ninja, we call him Thanos. Now, understand, he got this name for a reason, because he was known for fucking people up. And this shit started with him when we was kids, whooping everybody ass in the neighborhood, including grown men. And then he hits this massive, I mean massive growth spurt. We talking about 17 years old, 6'6", 6'7", 235 pounds, all muscle. And you combine his size with the crazy wild shit that happened to him in the hood between age 13 and 17. We talking about his father in the dope game, murdered right in front of him, bled out in his arms. Then after that, his mama gets hooked on drugs, cracked out. Negroes in the neighborhood is selling this man's mama crack right in front of him. And understand, I don't know Thanos since we was kids. All the stuff that happened to him started to change him. He basically raised himself. And I need you to understand, when you raise yourself in the hood, you got two choices. Either you're going to be the victim or you're going to be the aggressor. And that's why we started calling them Thanos, because it got to the point to where this dude went so far beyond the boundaries of what normal hood niggas do that it was completely and totally terrifying. Now, let me pause right here. No snitching. So I'm going to skip a few things, but I'm going to get some points across to you at the same time. Than, as I call him, took his first scalp at 17. Then he kept scalping people. And then by age 22, he had consolidated. Now, if you understand what I'm saying, you understand what I'm saying. But if you lost, just stay over there where you are and just be lost and follow the rest of the story. Now, after this consolidation at age 22, he's really, really, really different. Listen, I'm out here in these streets fucking around, get caught on a probation violation. So now I got to go sit for a year. And by the time I done came home, this Negro done took over everything. And at that point in time, there was only one other person in Houston that could even touch him. And straight up on some hood shit, just so you'll understand, that other person is literally considered the Black Don of Houston. Now listen, I need you to hop in the car and ride with me, and I need to explain some things to you. Take you on a tour around the hood. Now, if you're from the streets, you understand everything I'm about to say to you. But if you were lame and you was over in the wilderness, now come out, get in the car with me, and I'm going to explain it all to you. You see, as you get bigger and bigger in the game, you can't live in the hood anymore. It's too dangerous. You got to get outside of the hood. And on top of that, just like everybody else, nobody want to be living in the hood, man. Rats, roaches, crime. Everybody want to get out the trap. So now my dog is living in the vicinity. And the reason why I say vicinity, because I don't know who's going to be listening to this, the vicinity of LaGrange, Texas. Now, I get released. He got somebody to come over, pick me up, and take me over to his house. Listen, when I say my man got a spread, my dog got a spread, man. He done came a long damn way from living in the hood. He's got acres and acres of land. The shit that people from our neighborhood dreams about. Now, when I tell you I'm impressed, man, I'm impressed. To get to his house, you got to drive through his gate. He got one of them long driveways with a beautiful manicured front lawn. And listen to me, once you inside the crib, it's massive. Now, the only thing negative I can say about it at all is with all this money that my man's done made, he still got that ghetto-ass taste in furniture. But fuck it, we can work with that, right? Look. We sitting in the crib on a sofa watching a big flat screen TV, talking, smoking weed. And he's like, listen, York, I got you, man. You my oldest and most loyal friend. And no matter what you need, I got it for you. You need a place to stay, you got a bedroom upstairs. You need a whip, you got a truck in the garage. Money, don't worry about it. Clothes, don't worry about it. Listen to me. He gets up, walks over to the cigar case, opens it up, gives me $5,000 and like, yo, go buy you some clothes, get your shit together. You understand? Me and this dude go way back. I'm talking about holes in your shoes, sharing food off the same plate, far back. And for me to see him doing this well, honestly, I was just overwhelmed because niggas in the game don't get this far. You either in prison or you in the grave. So we grab a set of keys, head to the garage, and when he opens it up, damn, this nigga done bought me a Ford F-150 Raptor, black on blue. Now, talk about a fly truck. I'm walking around, they looking on the inside. But when I get to the backside, I look at these bumper stickers, NRA bumper stickers, don't tread on me bumper stickers. I'm like, yo, hold on, nigga. Why we got this shit on the back of the whole deal? Why is this here? Dan looks at me and says, man, when you in Rome, you do what Romans do. Baby, we not in the hood anymore. We ain't riding around being profiled. We got to blend in. You going to keep that shit on that truck. Ain't nobody going to pull you over, and we going to do what we do. Man, listen to me. When I tell you the next few days are the best days of my life, shopping, hanging out with beautiful bros. Listen, me and this nigga even went hunting. And listen, you got to understand something about my boy. He's hood. I'm telling him, look, nigga, we can't go in the woods with you smoking weed, talk about we going to kill a deer because the animals can smell you before you get there. Nonetheless, we spend about 2-3 hours walking around in the woods with the rifles, knowing that we ain't going to kill shit. Now, on the way back to the house, we see his neighbor out on the roadway. He stops and introduces me to this dude named Chris. Look, I'm in the truck, the two of them talking, and I'm listening to the conversation. I'm like, and I'm saying to myself, damn, you done missed your calling. Because this Negro should have been an actor. We from the hood. We don't have no country accents. Look, he's sitting here talking to his man Chris, and he goes from talking hood to having that country twang. I'm sitting in the car looking at him like, what the fuck is wrong with you? But unbeknownst to me, these two really do have a good rapport. These two fuckers out there talking politics, the NRA, bump stocks, all kinds of stuff. But when he gets back in the truck with me, his personality changes and he's back talking hood again. Now, you got to forgive me a little bit here because I don't remember the exact timeline. And once you hear what I'm telling you, understand why, because it was pure chaos. I'd say it was about 2.5 months after I got out of prison that all the crazy shit started happening. One night, we in the crib chilling, windows open, smoking, watching TV, when we started to hear gunfire off in the distance coming from the direction of his homeboy Chris's house. And up until this point, I didn't really understand that Than and Chris was cool like this. But he's like, yo, listen, we need to get up and go check on my man Chris. Somebody over there shooting. So we ride over, pull down the driveway, knock on the door, and his wife comes to the door looking like she just saw a freaking ghost. And again, I need you to realize, I didn't know he was this close to these people, saying, Jennifer, y'all all right over here? What's going on? She looks at him, eyes wide open, and says, no, Chris is off in the woods in the back of the house, shooting at something, and I'm worried. So now Than is scrambling back to his truck, grabbing a rifle, and he takes off running around the side of their house into pitch black darkness. And now we hear the sound of Chris firing shots again. Than is a little ways ahead of me, and I hear him screaming, Chris, it's Than, where you at? Chris, it's Than, where you at, man? Pause here for a second. Let me give you an insight into what I'm thinking at this point in time. Now, I'm not as invested into this shit that's going down right now, but he's my man. We go way back. So if he making a move into the darkness, I'm making a move into the darkness. And it takes us a good 35 to 45 seconds to hone in on the direction that these shots are coming from. But eventually, we close in on Chris. And when we finally find him, he's down on one knee, headlamp on, crying, kneeling over his dog. And we ain't talking about just regular tears rolling down your eyes. We're talking about that ugly cry, saying, those motherfuckers killed my dog. They killed my dog. Again, I need you to hop back in the car with me and imagine what I'm saying to you, because I need you to understand what I'm looking at. Standing there, looking at this dog, it's laying on the ground. It's literally been sliced in half. I'm talking about wounds so deep that you can see this dog's spine. Now, look, I know Chris is all emotional about his dog, but for us, in the car, on the outside looking in, this looked like some straight up X-Files bullshit. So I said, Chris, what did this to your dog? Still crying and sobbing tears, he says, it was wolves. The wolves did this to my dog. I'm going to get these motherfuckers. Now, let me tell you something. One thing you learn growing up in the hood is how to think when there's chaos. Now, I don't know about you, but as for me, I done seen the Animal Planet. And wolves, they go for the guts. Wolves don't slice animals in half. And let me explain something else to you. I done did time on the inside. Real prison. There were 5 cuttings per day in the prison that I was in. You do the math. That's 1,800 motherfuckers getting sliced and cut up per year. So I know exactly what a motherfucking slice and a motherfucking cut looks like. This dog had been fucking sliced in half. Wolves do not slice and cut dogs in half. They chew and gnaw and eat on shit. Whatever this was that did this, slice this fucking dog in half. And so I know without a doubt, this is some X-Files bullshit going on his property. So understand, Than is my man, $100,000. I don't fucking know Chris. So now I'm trying to sway the situation back in our favor. We don't need to be out here in these woods. Whatever the fuck did that. So I say, Than, listen, we need to grab this dog, get Chris back up to the house, man. Let's get it and let's go. But Chris is still there on the ground, crying, sobbing, and mourning over his dog. I look at Than, he looks at me. I look at Than, he looks at me. And I'm giving him that look like, nigga, this ain't our problem. We need to go. But he tells me, look, head back on up to the house and check on his wife. I'm going to get him. I'm going to get the dog, and we'll be up there in a minute. So now I'm jogging back towards the house, through the darkness, into the lights, up the steps, knock on the back door. His wife opens the door, this beautiful woman with this look of concern on her face saying, hey, what's going on? What can you tell me? Now, I have no way of explaining to this woman that her husband is out in the woods having an emotional breakdown over a dog that was sliced in half by something from the fucking X-Files. So I just say, listen, Jen, I was sent back here to make sure you're okay. I'm going to sit out here at the back door. They're on their way. As she and I are outside, standing safely in the light, peering out into the darkness, we start to hear more and more gunfire. Now, standing there next to this woman, you can tell she's not just a trophy wife. She's not just a beautiful woman. Because when most women hear gunfire, no matter how far away it is, they flinch and jerk. But she didn't move. She just stood there, staring and peering into the darkness. 30 minutes pass, and now we see that headlamp walking towards us. Than and Chris approaching. Chris, tears in his eyes, holding that dog in his hands. The only reason why the two halves of his body staying together, because he's literally holding and hugging it, blood running all over his body. His wife sees the dog, breaks down into tears, and me, I'm just standing there because this is some shit that I don't really understand. For me, growing up in the hood, dogs were dogs. We used to fight pit bulls. We used to beat them up. We did everything. But for white folks, dogs are more like members of their family. And I'd never seen a human being grieve over a dog like they had just lost their child. Look, Chris is safe. The dog is recovered. His wife is fine. I'm thinking that we finna roll the fuck out, right? But no. Than starts to help Chris dig a hole in the yard to bury the dog. And then he forces me to stand there with them as they say a prayer over the dog. Then, and only then, do we get in the truck and head back home. Now we're sitting in a driveway, and I'm like, listen, dog, you know the rules. Sharing is caring. And nigga, you not sharing everything with me. You gonna have to explain some shit to me because a lot of this shit that's happening right now don't make sense to me. He looks at me with attitude. It's like, well, nigga, what you talking about? What you want me to share? The man just told you that some fucking wolves attacked his dog. I don't know what you want me to explain to you. Now, listen to me. You got to understand something about my man, Than. He's a master at playing mind games. And the only way to break through the mind games that he plays at times is to be purely aggressive. So I tell him, nigga, you got us running around in the woods like Scully and fucking Mulder on some X-Files bullshit for a motherfucking neighbor that you don't really know? You must think I'm boo-boo the fucking fool. It's some shit you not telling me, Than, and I need you to fucking tell me why the fuck we was in the middle of the woods with that white boy and we don't fucking know him. Leaning on the armrest, he shifts his body to the driver's side door and says, man, my bad. I forgot who I'm talking to, homie. Chris is our connect. Huh? Yeah, he's our connect. Nigga, why you think I'm out here living in these woods? Look, the last time we had a connect, a motherfucker swooped in and took him. Next thing you know, they out here in these streets looking for us. So when I made this new connect, I'm not taking no chances. I move in right next door to him. I'm making myself an essential part of his life. We not losing this connect. And on top of that, Chris and Jen are good fucking people. I don't have no fucking problem with Chris and Jen being good people. I don't know them motherfuckers. But what gets under my skin is when you fucking try and hold back information from me like I'm a fucking fool. I'm not stupid, Than. All you got to do is lay it out for me, baby, and we make it do what it do. And that little mini argument between me and him ends with him sharing a tidbit of information with me that tomorrow morning they're going out into the woods to try and track the wolves that attacked Chris's dog. But listen to me again. I know for a fact that wolves don't slice other animals in half. So I tell them straight up front, nigga, I'm not going out there in them woods looking for whatever did that because that is not a fucking wolf. I'll go over to his house and watch over his old lady and make sure nobody do nothing. But I ain't going into them woods looking for that shit. I'm telling you, and you shouldn't go in them fucking woods looking for it either, man. I know he all connected shit, but he getting paid. We giving him his money on time, right? If he getting his money on time, that's all he need. We don't need to be going out in these woods looking for none of that shit. But in this case, as old friends do, we agreed to disagree, head into the house, and go to sleep. Sure enough, the next morning, we head over to Chris's house, and it's like 5 trucks out there, white boy trucks. And I'm talking about real cowboy hat wearing motherfuckers is at his house. And when we pull up and hop out, they looking at us like we crazy, and we looking at them like they fucking crazy. Within an hour, Than, Chris, this Mexican dude, and one of them cowboys are off into the woods. Now, I'm not going to sit here and tell you that I was nervous being around these dudes. But at the same time, I didn't want there to be no misunderstandings because Chris's wife is absolutely beautiful. Now she's inviting me into the kitchen to have coffee, and they're looking at me while I talk to her. So to make sure there's no motherfucking confusion about this man and his woman, I say to her, Jen, I'm going to take my coffee and head out to the porch, sit down and relax. I tell her, listen, I'm going to leave the front door open. If you need me, just holler at me. Now, outside, sitting down, drinking my coffee, out walks this big motherfucker. I mean, grave digger, WWE wrestling big. He's got one of those black cowboy hats on, jeans, cowboy boots, and then this t-shirt that says slow is smooth and smooth is fast. He looks at me and says, I done seen everybody else around here, but I ain't never seen you before. So before I explain to you what happens next, I got to break it down for some of the lames that's listening, those over there in the woods. Some of you might have a hard time understanding this because this is true alpha male shit right here. Yeah, this bitch was in the process of testing me. So I repeat his words right back to him. Fuck you mean you ain't never seen me around here before? I ain't fucking never seen you around here either. Listen to me. I ain't nowhere near as big as this motherfucker is, but the one thing I know is he ain't coming out here punking me. That shit ain't gonna happen, and he needs to know that that shit ain't finna happen. Now, let me tell you, this catches him by surprise a little bit, but you see his brain click on, his eyes light up. Now he goes into alpha mode himself and says, oh, so it's gonna be like that, huh, boy? Boy, you must be out your motherfucking mind. You big cornbread eating, hog chasing, deer hunting ass motherfucker. I ain't your motherfucking boy. This shit about to escalate and it's about to get popping. When Jen comes walking out of the front door and this sweet country voice says, now y'all fellas play nice out here. Big Todd, this is York. York, this is Todd. Todd is Chris's childhood friend, York. And Todd, York is Than's childhood friend. We're all on the same team. There's no need for you boys to fight. Y'all calm it down and bring it down a few levels. Then, like a true boss bitch, she turns around and walks right back into the house. The situation goes from level 100 back down to level 5, and he says, you down with Than. Than is a good dude. We really like him around here. He's smart, quiet, and he keeps his word. So if Than is like that, I'm assuming that's how you are. That leads to me and him sitting there for a few hours holding a conversation. Turns out he was locked up in Seagoville, Texas for like 5 years. And I had some folks that was locked up in there with him. And once we found common ground, Todd and I started to get along extremely well. Now, by sundown, the four of them are back from tracking this thing into the woods, and that's when all the confusion starts. And first of all, I would like to remind you that I told him before he went that this was some X-Files type bullshit. So they found a blood trail, they found tracks, but they all freaked out because they followed those tracks to a section of the woods, and they could tell that whatever they were following clawed its way up into a tree. On top of that, they found even more tracks in that section of the woods. And the little dude that they took out there with him, who was an expert tracker, tells them, listen, we need to leave right now because what I'm looking at are bipedal canine tracks and quadrupedal canine tracks. While they're standing there in the woods, he goes on to explain to them that wolves don't walk on two legs, and what we have stumbled upon is something completely different and utterly terrifying. Now, picture this. We're all sitting around in Chris's living room, and he goes into explaining to us his entire background. He starts off by saying he's been tracking his entire life. This has been his job since he was a little boy. And the only other time he has seen tracks like this was down in Mexico. And what him and his friends ended up running into in Mexico was absolutely deadly. His advice to us was to leave this thing alone in hope that it didn't come back. And nonetheless, he went on to share with us the story of what he saw. Now, before I tell you the story, I need you to read between the lines because everyone inside this room is in a dope game. Santeria de Sol, Mexico, dry land. He said he's hired to track down a man who stole some product and tried to go and hide. They go to the house where he's supposed to be and find this man's woman. Now, this woman is not only afraid of them, but she's pissed off at this dude because he left her. So she tells him that he drove off, headed west, trying to get away. Him and his crew head outside, find the tire tracks, and so now they're tracking him westward up into the mountains in the direction of another small town called Galos Blancos. Before they left, she told him he was about 45 minutes ahead of them, so they take off speeding in his direction. Moving uphill, it goes from dirt roads to trails, and the higher and higher they get, the harder and harder to drive it. And by the time evening rolls around, they pull up and find his empty vehicle. Hopping out, doing an inspection, the motherfucker had ran out of gas. Looking at the distance between the footprints, they can tell he's now running towards the west. So they hop back in their vehicle, riding along 10 to 15 miles an hour, keeping their eyes on the footprints. They've been riding for a while, moving back down that ridge. Sun is going down, making it harder and harder for them to see those tracks. But up ahead, illuminated by the headlights, they see what looks like blood on the ground. He instructs them to stop the vehicle, gets out, and inspects this blood on the ground, which turns out to be bloody bipedal canine footprints. They turn, now following the direction that the tracks had came from, and there he was, laying on the ground, chest torn open, leg ripped off, arms gnawed on, and guts torn out. As he finishes the story, the room falls completely silent. He says these creatures belong to El Diablo. Don't follow them. Don't shoot them. Don't do anything. Leave them alone. Now, have you ever seen one of those movies where a person makes a dramatic exit, like they just walk the fuck out? Well, that's exactly what this motherfucker does. He walks straight out the front door, doesn't even close that motherfucker behind him, hops in his truck, and pulls off, leaving each and every person in that room looking around like, what the fuck is going on? Look, this wasn't a surprise to me at all. I could tell by looking at this little man that he was telling the truth. He looked like one of those miniature MS-13 cartel motherfuckers. Tattoos all over his face, all over his hands, all on top of his bald head. Those type of people don't have a reason to lie, and they don't give a damn about impressing you. And as far as I was concerned, it was time for me to head home. I tell Than to give me the keys. I'm going home. If anything else goes down, all you need to do is give me a ring and I'll be right back over. He stays over at the house with them for a few hours and then comes back home. Now, for the next week or so, shit is all good. Nothing crazy happens. Then one evening, I'm out on the back porch, chilling, talking with my man Ski on the phone. It's about 4:30 or so. And I see some shit moving over there in the woods on the backside of our property. Big. So big that it's trying to hide behind the trees, but it can't freaking hide. And listen to me when I tell you I know what I saw, because I'm on the phone with Ski for like 15 minutes watching this big, black, hairy thing moving back and forth in the tree line for like 15 minutes. Through the phone, he detects that I'm distracted and asks me what's going on. And I say to him, nigga, have you ever seen the movie The Land Before Time? When the white folks went down into that big hole in the earth, and when it came out on the other side, there was dinosaurs and shit like that. Ski, nigga, I swear to you, that's the type shit we got fucking going on around here right now. Now, after 15 minutes of that, I had seen enough. I get off the phone, head back inside. Than had left the house earlier that day, and I figured by the time he gets home, it's going to be dark, so I need to call him and tell him what I saw in the woods. I give him a holler. I'm like, yo, listen, when you come in the crib, man, you better be careful because I see something big moving around in them woods in the back. So make sure you come in the front door. Don't fuck around on the back side of the house. That's when he tells me, look, I'm out here right now getting some new toys just for them motherfuckers. I'll be home in about an hour. Then we going out there and we going to deal with them. We? Bitch, you crazy. You going out there. Listen, I'll fight 100 motherfuckers with you. But that shit out there in the woods is some shit we don't need to be messing with. The little Mexican dude, all them tattoos, told you to leave that shit the fuck alone. Them things belong to the devil. Why in the fuck do you want to go out there and mess with them things? We need to leave them things alone, Dan. You tripping. Now, I guess me objecting to his plan pissed him off because he just hangs up the phone. About 2 hours later, this bitch comes home with these shotguns. And understand, Dan is a motherfucking felon. So I can't explain to you how or where the fuck he's got these guns from. But he got 2 AA-12 shotguns, big snare drums on the bottom of them. And you can tell whoever sold these to him spent time, educated him on them because he's all excited. See, yours has got the flashlight. It's got the A-frame sight on it. But this bitch right here is mine. It's got that fixed rail with the scope. You ain't got no scope on yours. You're going to have to use that A-frame, but you're going to be all right. But see, I got this here scope. Oh, yeah, we going to dump on these bitches. Then he digs into the bag, pulls out ammunition, and goes off again. And on top of that, nigga, we got that dragon's breath. Man, I'm telling you, nigga told me you hit anything with this, it's going to start dancing like Michael Jackson when that Jerry curl caught on fire. We finna head out into these woods. Let's go. And this is where he and I disagree again, because I tell him, look, nigga, I done told you. And I don't know how many times I got to say this to you. I'm not going out there in them woods fucking around with them devil things. I'm not going. I'm not doing it. Remember, I told you how manipulative this dude is, and he knows there's no way that he's going to drag me out of that house into them woods. So he starts to compromise, and he says, look, listen, this is what's going to happen. I'm going to go out there to the woods to the edge of the tree line. All I need you to do is take your gun and have my back. You ain't even got to go into the trees. I'm not even going to go into the tree line. You can stay 20, 30, 40 yards behind me. Make sure nothing sneaks up behind me. I'm just going to go out to the tree line and take a look. Now, if I see something, I'm dumping on it. But if I don't see nothing, we're going to come back to the house. That's all I want to do, y'all. Can we agree to do that? Let's just go out there. You ain't got to go all the way out there, baby. Just have my back. Make sure these bitches don't sneak up behind me. Look, so now we go outside, right? He gets up to the wood line. I'm about 30, 35 yards behind him. I kneel down on one knee. And to this day, I really can't explain to you why I did that. Maybe some shit I saw on TV. But I'm there, kneeling down, that shotgun laying across my knee. Now, remember, this motherfucker done told me that he not going into them woods. He gets to the tree line, and this bitch walks straight off into the woods. And I'm saying to myself, motherfucker, I knew you was going to do this. So now I'm moving to the edge of the wood line, and I'm pissed off. And I could tell this bastard has literally, now I'm at the edge of the woods screaming, bitch, you done seen too many motherfucking movies. You are not Arnold Schwarzenegger. Bring your ass back out of them woods right now. But no response. Dog, bring your ass out the woods, man. Come on, you tripping. No response. Now, like I told y'all, I've known him since we was kids. He a master at playing mind games and playing with your emotions. So I say, look, motherfucker, you tripping. I'm going back to the house. Turn around, and I start walking away. As I'm walking away, him say, all right, look, I'm coming back. Chill for a second, man. I'm coming right now. Now I can hear his footsteps coming towards me. And you can see the flashlight bobbing up and down as he's moving towards me in the woods. Then suddenly that light turns and disappears. After a few seconds, you hear that shotgun. Then you see this burst of flame shoot straight up into a tree. And I hear him screaming, there you go, motherfucker. I see you. Then another shot and another burst of flames. Standing there, I can see this huge mass jump down out of the tree, hit the ground, and dart off. But what his crazy ass did not realize is that there were 2 more of these things out there in the woods with him. So now imagine this. I'm running full speed into the woods. My eyes have spots on them from seeing those flames in the dark. And I'm screaming at him, yo, we got to go. They got more of these things out here. Now, as I'm closing in on him, I know he hears me. I'm thinking to myself, okay, that ought to be enough. He hears me telling him that there's more of them out here, but nope. Now he's just shooting in every direction. Boom, 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 boom. And as I told you, those dragon breath rounds are like mini flamethrowers. So now shit is starting to catch on fire all around him. Trees are catching on fire. Leaves on the ground are catching on fire. Listen to me, if Smokey the Bear was in the woods with us right then and there, he would be one pissed off motherfucker because now the whole shit is going up in the flames. And understand, I don't want to run up too close to him while he's shooting his shit, because if he fucks around and shoots that shit in my direction, I'm literally going to be bleeding smoke. So I come to a complete standstill, and now I'm screaming to him, yo, Dan, stop shooting, man. We need to go. And that was the first time I really got a good look at one of these things. It's off in the distance, looking at him, 9 feet tall, standing on 2 legs, eyes glistening this red and yellow from the flames of the fire. It's standing there right next to a tree, just looking at him. These big shoulders rolled forward, breathing hard. And it had these huge thighs, creepy, freaking fucked up legs and shit. You could tell this thing is smart because Stan is over there wilding, shooting in any direction, flames going off everywhere. I done seen the other 2 run off. But this one had already flanked him. It was standing there right next to a tree, looking, watching, observing him like it was making a decision. Now, I tell you, I know animals are smart and shit from watching the Animal Planet, but this is the whole nother level smart because this thing is standing there, head cocked to the side, looking at him, and you can tell it's trying to decide if it's going to go over there and fuck with this crazy ass nigga. That's the impression that it was giving me, like it was saying, wait, should I go over here and fuck with this crazy motherfucker shooting fire everywhere, or should I leave his crazy ass the fuck alone? This big wolf-looking motherfucker was confused. Then it looks over in my direction, locking eyes with me, and I'm telling you, it had that straight up Scooby-Doo impression on his face, like what the fuck is going on? I look at it, it looks at me, I look at it, it looks at me, Dan starts shooting again, and then this thing drops down on all 4s and takes off running. Now, at this point in time, the woods is on fire. I'm talking about California wildfire, flames fucking going up trees, the grass on fire. He done spit that dragon's breath shit all over the place. And this crazy son of a bitch is still out there in the fire, choking and coughing. And I'm like, nigga, if you don't bring your ass on. Listen to me. A few seconds later, his crazy ass comes walking back in my direction, flames going wild in the woods behind him. I swear to you, he looked like Lucifer himself walking out of hell. The fire is now spreading through the woods in the direction of Chris's property. And I'm like, yo, Dan, you gotta be fucking kidding me, dog. You done set everything on fire. What is wrong with you? Now, there's literal devastation and destruction going on in the background. And he says, man, fuck all that fire shit. Them bitches not gonna punk me off my land. They not gonna bring their ass back around this motherfucker no more. Watch, I promise you, they not gonna bring their ass around here no more. Now, I don't think the sheer level of destruction set in on his mind until we got on the back porch, turned around and looked. When he starts to wipe his mouth and says, man, that's a lot of fucking flames, man. We need to call somebody to do something about that shit. What you think we need to do? Nigga, we need to call the fire department. Is what the fuck we need to do. 15 minutes later, the fire department is out there on our property and Chris's property. Now, we in the house. They outside fighting the fire. And he's like, look, listen to me. We're going to tell these motherfuckers that this fire started because we was having a bonfire back there in the woods and the shit got out of control. And I'm like, dog, that shit not going to work, man. These people going to know that ain't from no fucking bonfire, dog. All the fucking trees on fire, man. The top of the fucking trees burn. That shit not going to work. So enough, when one of the firemen comes up to fill out the paperwork, he's like, well, tell me how this fire got started, sir. And Than's crazy ass, he tries to tell this fireman. Now listen to this. He tries to tell this fireman, a man who fights fires for a living, that all that shit started from a bonfire. And that fireman looks at him and says, well, I've never seen dragon's breath shotgun shells at a bonfire. Now, it's been months and months and months since that happened. And we ain't seen no more of those Dogmen. We ain't heard from them, not a peep. One night, we're sitting in Chris' backyard, sitting around a fire talking, and Big Todd says, you know what, Dan? I bet you confused the fuck out them things. They probably used to people being scared, taking off running. But I bet you, when they saw your crazy ass out there in the woods, shooting around, setting shit on fire, about to burn yourself up, they probably decided we don't need to fuck with this motherfucker. If he willing to kill himself to kill us, oh, we don't need to fuck with him at all.
Do you find yourself obsessing over things that go bump in the night? Are you losing sleep, battling with near-success syndrome, and pouring sugar on your haterade in the kitchen? You might be suffering from Dark Waters derangement syndrome. But fear not, we have a breakthrough solution for you. Introducing MEOB, the revolutionary treatment for Dark Waters derangement syndrome. MEOB stands for Mind Your Own Business, and it's the remedy you've been waiting for. Our patented formula helps you redirect your energy towards your own success and well-being. Say goodbye to sleepless nights, erectile dysfunction, and the constant need to discredit the Dark Waters channel.
Since I started taking MiWyob, I've been more focused, successful, and I've finally stopped obsessing over things that don't matter.
With Myob, you'll experience a 100% turnaround in performance, success, and overall mental fitness. Don't let Dark Waters derangement syndrome control your life. Take charge with Myob. Mind your own business, because your success matters.
It all started when Old Face Larry, my friend, came running down the road saying, "Man, I don't know what the hell I just seen, but whatever it was, man, that shit not right." Listen, we call him Old Face Larry because he looks like an old man, even though he's aged 18. Larry played basketball, so he would go out on these long 5-mile runs on the back roads between Lumberton, Mississippi and Poplarville, Mississippi. Well, he had just finished one of those runs, and honestly, I've never seen Larry breathing this hard. That's when he says, "Man, there was something out there running in the woods while I was running on the road, and it looked like a fucking werewolf." We laughed, thinking he done lost his damn mind, right? But Larry insists that he's not joking. So I foolishly suggest that we take the pickup truck and head back up there. Understand, my oldest brother Ross had this beat up red pickup truck. So we all pile up in that pickup truck and head back up the road to the location. Now, when we get to the spot, you can see a towel, a bottle of water, and keys. And that's when Larry starts screaming, saying, "Yeah, right there is where I saw it. Scared me so much, I dropped everything and just took off running." So we all climb out of the truck, get his stuff, and we're just standing there, staying close to the truck but looking around. And I get this, I'm scanning the trees and the bushes, but I'm looking low to the ground. When I turn and look in Larry's direction, he has this look of fear on his face, man. And yes, Larry is staring straight into the woods. So my eyes trace his eyes, and I realize that he's looking up at the branches of the tree. We're talking about 10 to 13 feet in the air. And it was hard to see at first, but when you took a close look, you could see these huge yellow eyes staring back at us. And by huge, I mean big as the bottom of that water bottle. Those yellow eyeballs darting back and forth, looking at each and every one of us. That's when Larry says, "Do you see it? Do you see it?" Now, listen to me. As much as I wanted to think that Larry had lost his mind, nope, not at all. I saw those giant yellow eyes. So we all pile in the truck and get the hell out of there. Larry is sitting there in a cold sweat. And that's when he reveals to us that he saw a second one on the opposite side of the road while he was climbing back into the truck. Now, imagine the scene. There's 3 of us sitting in my brother's red truck, parked in a driveway, when Ross comes out of the front door, and I guess he could tell that something was wrong. Because he says, "What the hell is wrong with you boys?" And when we tried to explain to my older brother what we experienced, he just starts laughing at us. "Boy, y'all stupid. I can't believe y'all went down there. You know what you saw. You know what you saw, right?" We're like, "No, what was it?" He says, "That's the Wolfmen. They've been around here since before these towns was built. Your stupid ass is lucky it didn't eat you. Give me my keys and get the hell out of my truck before you get it messed up." Now, as we're climbing out of Ross's truck and I'm handing him the keys, he says, "Listen, y'all might as well go ahead on and take off all those clothes, including your underwear. Put them in a brown paper bag, take them out back, and burn them. That way them wolfmen don't come over here to our house. We don't need that kind of shit over here at our house. Go ahead on and burn it right now. And guess what? Within the next 30 minutes, we had changed clothes and burnt everything that we had on, including my Nike tennis shoes. Now, let me explain something to you. I got to give old face Larry all the credit in the world. He's a brave, brave man. Because me, I never went anywhere near that area again. But you see, Larry had ambitions of being a college basketball player. And this crazy fool went running down that same road the following week. When I asked him if he had seen anything crazy or strange or felt anything weird, Larry said no. He prayed about it and he took off running. Looking back on it all, Larry's efforts paid off because he got a full basketball scholarship to the University of Arizona. As for me, I ended up working at a chicken plant.
Blood-curdling, spine-chilling, heart-racing fear. You are now listening to Dark Waters Radio.
Holding on to the hand of self-destruction. I'm back to a place that I left a long time ago. Just give me a sec, I'll smoke this cigarette. Aching body feels better stoned. What do you do when you pick up my guitar and
A couple of shows ago, a gentleman called in asking about a dead horse in Dogman. This horse's face was chewed on, the genitalia eaten out. Well, you guys speculated whether it was Dogman or some type of cattle mutilation. The reason why I contacted you today is because I've had the very same thing happen to one of my favorite horses. And I can tell you for sure that it was Dogman. Understand, I have 500 acres of land, horses, pigs, chickens, a barn, a full stable, the works. My favorite horse's name was Roosevelt. One evening, we're on the back side of my property. He's tied to a tree. I'm working on a fence, and Roosevelt just goes crazy, bucking and pulling, pops the rope, runs 30 yards over to me, and starts looking at me like we need to go. Now, I'm figuring it's a pack of coyotes in the area because I've had serious problems with coyotes from time to time. But now I notice he's got his back to me, bumping into me like he didn't want to let something get behind him. Now, imagine a scene. That area of my property, there's this trail that you ride to get back up in there. Once you get into that area, it's kind of a horseshoe. There's thick brush on both your left and your right. And my property line actually curves, making a U shape. As I'm standing there trying to finish making repairs to this fence, Roosevelt will not leave me alone. So I say, okay, boy, you ready to go? We're going to go ahead and go. Listen to me. The minute I mount him, he takes off, falling ass out of there. I'm trying my best to slow him down, but he's not having it. He runs full speed up that trail, head darting back and forth, looking left and right like he's spooked. So spooked that now I'm starting to get afraid, looking and trying to see if there's something there in the thick brush, but I don't see anything. Now, when we get back to the front side of the property, I dismount him, get him some water, and go to leave. But he follows me towards the house. And right then and there in that moment is when I knew something strange was going on, because Roosevelt never behaved this way. He was a stubborn bastard.
when we were done doing whatever we needed to do, normally he would look at me like, okay, you go your way and I'm gonna go my way, leave me the hell alone for the rest of the day. But he damn near followed me to the back door. So I walk him into the fence and let him go into one of the pastures. Hours pass. I'm inside. My wife is cooking supper. It's about to get dark outside, so I head out to stable him. And he's not there. So now I'm on my 4x4. The sun is damn near gone down. And remember, I have 500 acres of land. And I'm out here looking for him. Listen to me. With any other horse in my stable, I wouldn't even put this type of energy and effort into finding them. I would have let them come back on their own. But Roosevelt was a gift from my wife. And I had a special bond with this horse. Something in the back of my mind told me I needed to go back up that trail where we were earlier that day. And the minute I got on that trail, I get this eerie feeling like I'm being watched. So now I have my rifle in hand, driving along. I go 400 yards, 450 yards, 500 yards, and I see blood all over the place. Confused, when I come around one of the turns in that trail, Roosevelt is laid out, face chewed off, and there's this giant black wolf standing on two legs, pulling him by one of his hind legs. His genitalia is gone. For a moment there, I found myself in shock, then scared. But right after that, I got pissed, really, really pissed. So I start shooting. I hit this thing twice, and it did nothing. It just looks at me, lets him go, and starts to head in my direction. So I empty the magazine. I'm nervous. I'm scared. I'm aiming for its lower thigh. But I swear to you, I must have hit it in its genitalia because it dropped down on all fours and took off running. Now, disappointed, hurt, confused, afraid. Those were all the emotions I felt as I headed back home. I would have never imagined that there was something like this on my property. And there was absolutely no way that I could deal with it on my own. So when I get back home, I call my best friend Elmo, tell him what happened, and he agrees to go with me early the next morning to retrieve Roosevelt's body. That following morning, when we get back out there, Roosevelt is gone. Flies all over the place, the blood done dried up, ants swarming on the pieces of his flesh left on the ground. Calling the game warden was Elmo's idea, so we call him. They come out, look around. This man tries to brainwash me and tells me that it was a cougar that I saw. And that's when I lost it. Cursed his ass out, told him to get the fuck off my property. I know exactly what I saw. It wasn't a cougar, and you can't make me believe it was a cougar. Like I said to you earlier, you could have never told me that I would be afraid on my own piece of land. But ever since these incidents, I don't even go anywhere near the backside of my property. And I used to care about that section of land. People would hunt it illegally. I would have to go back there and run them off. But now, mentally, I have completely written it off. That section of property does not belong to me. It belongs to whatever the hell is back there. And I prefer for it to stay back there than come anywhere near the front side where my chickens, horses, cows, and pigs are. So guess what, Dogman? You can have all that back there. It's yours.
Now listen, I have to admit to you that I never ever really believed in Dogman, but for some reason the topic just fascinated me. So I listened to a number of stories on YouTube and decided that I would go out and take a look for them. But the very first problem I ran into was I discovered that a number of these stories that people are telling just aren't true. So then I started listening to interviews. You know, the kind of interviews where people tell where they actually had their encounters and what city and town and state. But I had no luck with that either. It wasn't until I started tracking a few of the strange news stories, missing people, dead farm animals, and swamp animals, that I finally got on the right track. I ended up traveling down south to Louisiana, into the marshes, an island south of Morgan City. Now, before I go any further with the story, let me tell you this. To those of you who are thinking about doing what I did, I'll say this. If you're willing to risk your life and limbs just to see one of these creatures, it's possible. However, after what I experienced, I think that you should under no circumstances ever, never ever, go out looking for these dogmen. They're smart, tactical, and vicious. Anyway, back to the story. Through my research, I found out that hunters and fishermen were finding dead deer and pelicans washed up in the bayous. These things were half eaten and torn apart. The deers had their necks broken and had claw marks all over them. You see, the locals in Louisiana called this creature that I was looking for the rougarou. I called it the Dogman. So I made a contact with a few people. I headed down to New Orleans, and then from New Orleans to Morgan City. Once I hit the city, I wasted no time getting out to the swamps. I was only going to be there for 5 days, so I wanted to get moving. And to be honest with you, the first 4 days I was there was completely uneventful. It was on the morning of the 5th day that stuff started to happen for me. You see, I was having breakfast at this local diner when this boy walks in. And by boy, I mean he was no older than 19 or 20 years old. He walks up, sits down across from me, and says, "Mister, you the guy that everybody's saying looking for the rougarou?" Now, this dude seemed paranoid and shaky. You know, he was fidgeting and moving around, and his eyes kept darting left to right. I said, "Yeah, I'm looking for the rougarou." "What you plan on doing?" he said. That's when I told him, "I just want to know for sure that they actually exist." This boy looked at me, started giggling and laughing. So, "Yeah, I can assure you that they're real." "How much you paying for the information?" "You pay me, I'll give you the coordinates to where they're going to be." I looked at this kid and I figured, look, maybe he's trying to hustle me for a few bucks, but I'll give him $50 just to check the coordinates out. So I say $50. That's when he looks at me and says, $500. Them people on them TV shows that's been coming down here, they've been paying thousands of dollars for this type of information. Now I found myself in the middle of a negotiation with a dusty, dirty little Cajun kid. So I quickly brought it to a head. $250 is all I'm paying. You can take it, or you can get up from this table and go about your business. That's when this kid pulls out his cell phone, shows me pictures of the rougarou. Not one, not two, but 3. He said him and his brother had been taking pictures of him from the water because they transverse this island every evening. He even said they tried to shoot one of them with a tracking device, but they missed, and 4 of them jumped in the water and started swimming after him. After seeing them pictures, I was more than happy to spend $250. He told me, go to the area right before sundown, and I would see them passing along the island. As he was taking his money, he looked at me and said, whatever you do, don't go nowhere near that island. Stay 50, 60, 70 yards away out into the channel. These things can swim. They'll swim up to your boat and yank you out. After that, he took his $250 and walked away. Honestly, I was a little excited. I've been searching for these creatures about 11 months and had not one real lead. So I grabbed me some water, food, gassed up the boat, and headed out to that spot. But I was there early, way early. I got there at 1:30 p.m. And with 5 hours left until the sun was going down, I figured I'd just pull my boat up on the island just to get a closer look. In my crazy mind, I was thinking I just wanted to be able to say I walked on the same land that Dogman walks on. So I moved my boat closer up to the island, hopped off, and tied the rope holding my boat to the tree. I'd never been on an island in the swamps before, and the ground wasn't what I expected it to be at all. It was strong, firm, not even soggy at all. I walked further onto the island, about 10 to 12 feet, right until I got to this line of trees. And believe me, I wanted to walk further, but my nerves wouldn't let me. But what I was able to see beyond those trees was open, flat land. It really was a little island. It had high grass, but it was open, flat land. I can't tell you why at this point in time I started getting nervous. there really was no reason. But I figured it was best for me to get back on the boat. So I turned and started walking back towards the boat. And that's when I saw it for the first time. Dogman footprint. This thing was big. And what I mean by big is, you know how you go to one of those kids' birthday parties and they have those little small brown plastic plates where you can put a few sandwiches and a piece of chicken on? Well, take one of those, turn it over and press it in the ground. That's how big the front pad of this print was. That's huge. And it was sunk deep into the mud. After seeing that, I knew for sure the Dogman was real. So I got my behind on that boat and headed back out towards the middle of the channel and set anchor. I had positioned myself about 75 yards away from this island. And the swamps were tingling with life. I mean, pelicans flying, fish swirling, crickets chirping, frogs croaking. It was absolutely beautiful. And with the exception of the mosquitoes and bugs, it was picture perfect. But as it got closer to 5 o'clock, a line of boats started coming down the channel, passing me one by one. These were fishermen heading back in for the day. What else was cool was that I had never ever seen a shrimp boat. These things have these massive nets that hang on each side of the boat, and it was cool. And then one of these guys in this real small, beat-up skiff pulled up right next to me. He looked at me and said, "You finna head on in?" I ain't gonna lie to you, I was confused. I was like, I don't even know this dude. So I answered, "Yeah, in a little while." Then he said, "You might want to head on in, at least get to moving off this spot." When I asked him why, he said, "You must not be from around here." And I said, "No, sir, I'm not." He's like, "Well, let me tell you something. This is not the spot you want to be in. So you need to get to moving on in." Then he drove off in his boat. As he drove away, he looked back at me over his shoulder, kind of shaking his head and looking at me with this look on my face like I was crazy or stupid. But I didn't care. I wanted to see Dogman for myself. And I wasn't leaving that spot until I saw it. Right about 5:55, the sun started going down. And the further it went down, the crazier things got. The first thing I saw was two big alligators, 10 to 12 feet long, come running off that island. You know how they say gators can move about 9 and 10 miles an hour when they're on land? Well, these two big boys moving 12 to 13. I mean, they came barreling off the island, sliding into the water, and disappeared. Next, I could hear another boat in the distance. And I'm not sure where it was, but this thing's engine was wide open. And when I came in, there was a lot of debris in the water. Whoever that was risking their life speeding like that. They could have easily hit something and flipped over. Then stuff got even more weird. Everything in the swamp went silent. And when I say everything, I mean everything. No more crickets, no more fish moving, no frogs croaking, no nothing. It was eerie. Next, I started to hear this splashing sound in the water. It was a ways off, but I was 100% certain that something was in the water splashing around. But it wasn't the sound of fish jumping. It sounded like something actually swimming through the water. About 5 minutes after that, I saw the first one. It was on all fours, and it ran past those same trees that I was standing next to earlier that day. The light had gotten real dim, but I was still able to see it. Then I saw a smaller one sniffing around. Man, to be honest with you, I was completely disappointed, because if this was supposed to be the rougarou, it couldn't have been. It just looked like large dogs running on all fours. But it wasn't until I heard this growling sound that I was sure the Dogman was somewhere around. My entire body trembled. And for the first time, I realized that maybe I had bitten off way more than I can chew. And although I heard the growl, when I looked around, I couldn't see any. Based on what I heard, I really didn't want to see what made that sound. So I grabbed the rope attached to the anchor, started to pull it up out of the water. That's when I hear the sound of another boat coming down the channel. And this thing is moving, has the lights on in front of it, and is headed directly towards me. I start to wave and swing my hands, trying to signal them and let them know that I was there. And right at the last second, they swerve and turn away. And it was crazy. Because you know how it is when you're driving in your car and you pass by another vehicle and you get a quick glimpse of the person through their window as they're passing by? It was just like that, except for the guy was looking at me and pointing to the island. Then the wake from his boat tossed me and shook me a little bit, making me drop the anchor back into the water. And while I was stumbling around on this boat, trying to regain my balance, I heard that growling sound again. This time, it was way louder and much closer. By now, there's absolutely no light left, and I'm freaking out. And what you have to understand is this boat passed on the right-hand side of me, and the island is to the left. So the wake was actually pushing my boat closer and closer to the island. I was in danger. I knew it and I felt it. Although I didn't see anything at that point in time, I knew my life was in mortal danger. So I grabbed the rope and started pulling the anchor up again. And in the back of my mind, I already know the more I pull this anchor up, the closer and closer I'm going to drift to this island. So I start pulling as fast as I can and get the anchor up on the boat. And as I'm maneuvering my body to get behind the steering wheel of the boat, I start to hear this rustling sound, which instantly let me know that I had drifted way closer to this island than I wanted to. So I crank the engine, throw the boat in reverse, and start wheeling it around so I can turn and go in the opposite direction. As I'm turning, I flick on the floodlight right at the front of the boat, and it slowly starts to illuminate that water in the channel and the island itself. And all I can tell you is that what I saw completely messed me up. As the boat turned and that floodlight illuminated everything, right on that spot where I was about 4 hours earlier, I saw a creature. This thing was 9 to 10 feet tall and standing on two legs. It was looking right at me. And about 10 feet out from the bank into the water were two more of these things. I couldn't see their bodies, but I could see their eyes, snouts, and ears poking out of the water. Man, now some people are going to think I'm lying, but I know exactly what I saw. Those eyes illuminated this orangish yellow color. For a split second, I thought it might have been gators, but their eyes illuminate red at night. This color was an amber orange color, and it was bright. And unlike an alligator, these eyes were huge. Man, I hit the throttle on that boat and got the hell out of there. When I reached the boat rental dock, I got out, walked up there, handed the owner the keys, got in my truck, and drove until I was 250 miles away from them swamps. Only then did I start to feel safe. I got me some coffee, and after that, I drove until I was completely tired and was about to pass out. I pulled over at a well-lit truck stop and slept. A few hours later, I drove again and kept on driving all the way till I got home. After seeing these creatures, I was so afraid. When I got home, I took every book, every article, everything I had about Dogman and burned it. Not only are they real, but they were about to kill me.
Listen, I know people say Dogman is bad. And I guess in some cases it can be. But in my case, he was a savior. This happened when I was 19 years old on the outskirts of Jackson, Mississippi. I was living there and doing the wrong things. Ended up stealing money from a very, very dangerous man. It's 9:30 p.m. I'm headed home, walking through this alley, and out of the blue, they attacked me, hitting me, slamming me against the fence, punching, kicking, blood pouring out of my mouth. My lips burned as they swelled up. The only thing left to do was to curl up on the ground, trying to protect my head. That's when I hear this growl, and the beating stops. Looking up, I can barely see what looks like a giant black wolf on the other side of that fence. They take off running, and I black out. Hours later, I wake up, drag myself home, not sure exactly what the hell happened. But get this, 2 days later, I get a visit from the same dudes who beat my ass, asking me to call off my dog, saying that dog had been following them around. Look, to this day, I'm not sure why Dogman did this, but I'm glad it did. But a month later, I had to leave Jackson because word on the street was murder. They were going to kill me over $3,000. So I fled.
Blood-curdling, spine-chilling, heart-racing fear. You are now listening to Dark Waters Radio.
Somewhere along the way, it became cool to be a single mother. But for real, it's not. Having to deal with all the bullshit alone. bills, sick children, men seeing you nothing more than sex. It all gets old very quickly. When my husband and I were together, things weren't perfect, but it sure as hell wasn't the way it is right now. Anyway, my 9-year-old son and I are forced to move after the divorce. See, the judge told me and my husband, or my ex-husband, that we had to sell the house and split the proceeds. So with my portion of the proceeds, I bought a small 2-bedroom home. It was nice and cozy, and I loved the sound of the rain pattering on the tin roof. Everything was good until one night at 2 a.m. I wake up startled, looking around and see nothing. When I walked down the hallway, headed to the kitchen to get a glass of water, there were these 2 little girls standing at the end of the hallway. You know how in those movies they have those demonic-looking twin girls? Well, they gave off that very same vibe. I stood there for a moment in complete shock, and then they just faded away.
Blood-curdling, spine-chilling, heart-racing fear. You are now listening to Dark Waters Radio.
It's 11:59 at Radio Free America, and this is Uncle Sam with music and the truth until dawn. Right now, I got a few words for some of our brothers and sisters in the occupied zone. The chair is against the wall. The chair is against the wall. John has a long mustache. John has a long mustache. It's 12 o'clock, Americans, another day closer to victory. And for all of you out there on or behind the lines, this is your song.
The truth is out there.
It is one of the world's greatest mysteries, Scotland's legendary Loch Ness Monster. So does the lake creature actually exist? Well, if you ask one man, he'll tell you it is in fact no myth.
Every day is flaunted in front of your face.
Hundreds of people in the valley say they are hearing voices in their heads.
You just choose to ignore it.
Belief can be a powerful force. No one knows that better than the people who are sure they've seen Bigfoot.
Real accounts.
He says he knows who's playing mind games.
Rogue government officials that are sponsoring this, also corrupt business officials, and private citizens.
From real people.
Hundreds of people turned out tonight for the unveiling of a very controversial statue.
Yeah, it really is. The Satanic Temple of Detroit revealed the 1-ton bronze statue.
It's time for you to take a swim.
I'm just excited to see my Lord and Savior Baphomet represented in such glorious Italian stone. I do hope his eyes gaze upon me, and that my allegiance is recognized.
In the dark waters.
The Dark Waters channel is for entertainment purposes only. Although information in these stories can be traced back to relevant and true sources, Dark Waters strongly discourages its viewers, listeners, and subscribers from visiting the site of incidents and encounters discussed or revealed on the show. In other words, we will not be held responsible if you are attacked by a dogman, molested by a bigfoot, bitten by vampires, chased by chupacabras, abducted by aliens, accosted by the men in black, investigated or arrested by the local law enforcement, CIA, FBI, NSA, EPA, BLM, or another alphabet group, whether on U.S. soil or abroad. Thank you for tuning in and enjoy the show.
When you want a hot meal without a big deal, what are you gonna pick? Hot Pocket.
Dog Waters, you asked me to write my encounter down, so here it goes. I'm a ranch hand, and I work in East Texas. For the past 24 months, my employment situation has been a little shaky. I worked odd jobs here and there, but nothing real steady. So when I heard that the Rogers Farm was hiring, I decided to give it a shot. Now, there were these rumors going around about the strange occurrences on that farm, but based on my situation, I really had no choice but to go after this job. And regardless of whatever I found out there, even if I managed to only stay there for a few weeks, it was way better than what I was doing at the moment. So I headed to the property. When I arrived there, I parked and got out of the truck and looked around. This was supposed to be a farm, but in actuality, it's nothing more than a house on a huge plot of land. Overgrown grass, dilapidated fences. It was a mess. I walked up to the front door and knocked, and that was my first time meeting the old man Roger. He was a pretty cool guy, but he was old. He invited me into the house and to his kitchen table, set me down, and started to explain to me what he needed done around his property. Poured us a cup of coffee as we sat there and talked. He explained to me that all the grass on his property needed to be cut, and that a number of his fences were broken and needed to be welded. He also told me that once that was done, there was a job painting the house, rebuilding the chicken coops. His list went on and on and on. While he was talking, I looked around and noticed the family photos all around the house. And I asked him, "Excuse me, sir, it looks like you have a pretty large family. Is there anyone else who stays here with you?" That's when Mr. Roger told me that he had 2 sons that would come by and check on him, but no one other than him stayed at the property. He went on to explain that his wife had died of cancer and his daughters had moved out of town, and all he had left really was just his farm. Now, I really didn't like the idea of negotiating compensation with an old man, but I needed the money. So I asked him, "What rate are you paying?" And in true form of any negotiation, old man Roger threw the question right back at me. "What rate would you like?" Now, for most people, this situation is a bit of a conundrum, but not me. I needed to pay my light bill, I needed to pay my cell phone bill, and I definitely needed to pay my car note. So I told him, "How does $35 an hour sound to you, Mr. Roger?" And to my surprise, he quickly agreed. Now, looking back on the situation, that should have been the very first clear sign to me that something was wrong. But again, I was in need of money. I really wasn't paying attention to those kind of things at that point in time. We shook hands. I took my coffee and headed out to the truck. The first thing I needed to do was get a true assessment of the property. So I drove my truck around the side of the house and onto the back side of the property. His farm pretty big, a good 12 to 18 acres. Just cutting the grass alone was going to take some time. And I had to cut the grass before I could even see what was going on with the fences. As I drove around his property, I started to notice little small things, like his chicken coop was knocked over, and one of his barn doors looked like it had been broken or taken off the hinges. Again, looking back on it, these are all signs that something crazy and weird was going on, but I was blinded by the money. After I had taken time and driven around the property, I decided I would take a shot at cutting the grass. So I drove my truck up to the barn, parked it, hopped out, and headed in. When I walked in, there was this strange smell. It wasn't quite like any animal that I had ever smelled before, but I didn't think much of it. I hopped on the tractor and tried to crank it up. I had to tinker with the fuel line a bit in order to get it started, but soon I was off and running. I had been cutting the grass for about an hour and a half and was really feeling good about myself. For once, I felt like things were turning around for me. $35 an hour was good money, and for the first 2 days, really all I was going to be doing was cutting grass. All was well, at least till I got to the very back side of the property. In that area, there's this thick row of trees and bushes, so thick that you can barely see through it. And as I was driving the tractor back in that area, I started to get this strange feeling, like eyes were looking at me from every angle. And all the rumors that people said about something being weird with the property came rushing back into my mind. So, to try and block it out, I plugged in my earbuds and popped on some music on my cell phone. I continued to cut for another 10 to 15 minutes, and then a tractor hit something, and this thin white cloud of dust started shooting up in the air. When I stopped the tractor, got down and take a look, there were these bones everywhere, but it was covered by all the thick grass and brush. And as I took a closer look, it was cattle bones, but not one or two. It looked like someone had slaughtered 20 to 30 different cattle and left them right here in this area. Now that was weird. And the next weird thing was, as I rode down the western fence line, I started to notice these claw marks on the trees, high up on the trees, 10 to 12 feet in the trees. None of it made sense. So I finished that day out and headed back to the house to talk to Mr. Roger about getting an advance on my pay. I figured I could talk him into at least 3 days of advance pay. That way I could pay my truck note. And again, to my surprise, he agreed. Not only did he agree to pay me 3 days, he paid me 5 days in advance. And as I was walking out of the front door, headed back to my truck, I said, "Hey, it looks like a bunch of your cattle died on the back end of the property. There's nothing but bones there. What do you want me to do about it?" The old man looked at me square in my eyes and said, "Leave that area uncut and stay away from there. Let's just focus on the front side of the property and getting it squared away." And that was how my first day at my new job ended. It was rather uneventful. But the next day, oh my God. I arrived at the property at sunrise. I needed to finish cutting the grass, and my to-do list was long. I had to fix the barn door, purchase lumber to build the new chicken coops, and get started on the first section of the fence repair. When I walked into the barn, I was assaulted by the strongest scent of urine I've ever smelled in my life. It made my nose run and my eyes water. It smelled like 100 dogs had taken a piss all over the place. The tractor seat itself was soaked. And when I say soaked, I mean there was a puddle of piss just sitting there. What the fuck did this? I think I even said it to myself out loud as I walked out of the door, headed to the house to get the garden hose. That's when I noticed for the very first time that there were bars on every window and door of the house. And not just regular bars. These were custom-made metal bars. I grabbed the hose, drug it back to the barn, washed down the tractor, and was off to work. By 12 noon, I had finished cutting all the grass and turned my attention to fixing the barn door. But the thing was hopeless. The entire door needed to be rebuilt. It looked like someone had ran into it with the tractor. While I was standing there making a list of all the materials I needed to fix it, a man came walking out of the tree line, climbed the fence, and introduced himself. He said, "Hi, my name is Sam." Now, this Sam guy was a little shifty. His eyes kept darting left to right, and he was avoiding questions. I said, "Sam, you from around here?" "Yep, smell that urine. It's all over the place, real strong." "Well, what was it? Is it dogs?" "Yeah, this farm has been through a whole lot of tragedy." It was like this dude was hearing a different question than the one I was asking him. "So you do live nearby. How long have you lived in this area, Sam?" Then he said some real crazy stuff. "It all starts when you smell the piss. By tomorrow, they'll be all over the place." "They? Who are they?" "If I was you, I'd be looking to get on down the road and stay away from here." Then this dude, Sam, just walks away back into the tree line just as suddenly as he came. This completely threw me for a loop. But by the evening time, I had gotten the barn door fixed and the place was looking much better. I went around to the front of the house and knocked on the door to tell the old man I was leaving, but he didn't answer. So I walked around the back side of the house, but there was no sign of him. When I thought about it, there was a car that had pulled up during the daytime, so I figured the man had taken off somewhere for a ride to get groceries or something. When I got in my truck and started to drive off, I couldn't help but think about what Sam said. What the hell was he talking about? Who were they? The following day, I would certainly find out. The next day, I arrived at the farm a little bit later than normal and went straight to work. You see, the day before, I wasn't able to get to the fences, so I began walking the fence line, looking for places that needed to be welded. And as I'm walking, I started to hear this movement up in the trees. It was about 50, 60 yards away, but it definitely was a sound coming from up in the trees. And as I continued to walk, the sound seemed like it was paralleling me as I went along. It's like something was there just out of my eyesight, and it was stalking me. I started to feel real crazy, you know, that the hair started standing up on my arms. I got a lump in my throat, and I started sweating. I felt like I was in danger. And I decided the best thing for me to do was go get my truck and bring it back to the spot where I was working, just in case there was some type of wild animal I could hop in and pull off. It took me about 30 minutes to get all my equipment ready and set up in the bed of the truck, and I decided to park creating a 90-degree angle with the fence line. And as I'm there welding the first section, things are going good. I get to the second section, things are going great. I get to the third section, and it's right before the sun goes down. And I start getting that crazy feeling again. But this time it's way more intense. I take off my welding hammer and put it in the bed of the truck and just start looking around. And I start picking up the pieces of metal pipe so I can get out of there. I had just picked up the very last metal rod off the ground, turned to put it in the bed of the truck, when I felt and heard this growl. Man, this wasn't a dog, this wasn't a cougar, this wasn't anything I'd ever heard. It was so loud and so strong. You know how you have the surround sound set up in your house? You turn it up real loud, and then there's this growling roar, and everything in the house vibrates? That's what it was like, except for this wasn't a movie. The metal pipe I had in my hand began to vibrate, and I felt this vibration in the palm of my hands. I didn't want to turn around. Honestly, I wanted to run and get in my truck, but something made me look back behind me. And I wish I would have never done that. Had I not seen this thing, I probably could have kept working there. But when I turned around, this creature was standing 30 feet away from me. And this thing was huge and had a colossal sized wolf head. It stood there staring at me, showing its teeth, and then those eyes. His eyes were this yellow color with this huge black pupil. Once I made eye contact with this thing, my mind was telling me to run, but it was like there was a disconnect between the signal in my brain and my body because I couldn't move. This thing's chest expanded and contracted as it breathed. And for a second, I thought it was a prank. And I don't know if it was fear or my nerves or what, but somehow I dropped that metal pipe out of my hand. It hit the bed of the truck and then rolled to the ground. That's when I heard a footstep coming from my left side in my blind spot. And I thought to myself, fuck it, I have to go. So I scrambled into the bed of my truck, up over on top of the cab, and I slid down right in front of the driver's side door, hopped in and pulled off. As I'm driving away, I looked through the rearview mirror. That's when I see another creature. It's smaller and more slim, but it still looks like a dog and it's walking towards this bigger one. Man, I drove straight to the local bar and got me a drink. And when I walked in and sat down, the bartender Everett just looked at me and said, "We've been wondering how long you're going to last out at that property. Looks like you finally saw those things, right?" Everett went on to explain to me that what I saw was dogmen. Never heard about this shit in my entire life. He said that they had a bet going on exactly how long I would last out there at that property. Then he went on to tell me the old man had actually left the property and went to his daughter's house. And that this old man had been hiring people to work on that property for years and then leaving. Oh, and Sam, the crazy dude that walked up to me, according to Everett, that was his way of warning me about what was out there. When I learned about all this, I was pissed off. I didn't give the old man his money back, and I damn sure didn't go back out to that property.
Blood-curdling, spine-chilling, heart-racing fear. You are now listening to Dark Waters Radio.
The truth is out there.
It is one of the world's greatest mysteries, Scotland's legendary Loch Ness Monster. So does the lake creature actually exist? Well, if you ask one man, he'll tell you it is in fact no myth.
Every day is flaunted in front of your face.
Hundreds of people in the valley say they are hearing voices in their heads.
You just choose to ignore it.
Belief can be a powerful force. No one knows that better than the people who are sure they've seen Bigfoot.
Real accounts.
He says he knows who's playing mind games.
Rogue government officials that are sponsoring this, also corrupt business officials, and private citizens.
From real people.
Hundreds of people turned out tonight for the unveiling of a very controversial statue.
Yeah, it really is. The Satanic Temple of Detroit revealed the 1-ton bronze statue.
It's time for you to take a swim.
I'm just excited to see my Lord and Savior Baphomet represented in such glorious Italian stone. I do hope his eyes gaze upon me, and that my allegiance is recognized.
In the dark waters.
The Dark Waters channel is for entertainment purposes only. Although information in these stories can be traced back to relevant and true sources, Dark Waters strongly discourages its viewers, listeners, and subscribers from visiting the sites of incidents and encounters discussed or revealed on this show. In other words, I will not be held responsible if you are attacked by dogmen, molested by Bigfoot, bitten by vampires, chased by chupacabras, abducted by aliens, accosted by the Men in Black, investigated or arrested by local law enforcement, CIA, FBI, NSA, EPA, BLM, or any other alphabet group, whether on U.S. soil or abroad. Thank you for tuning in and enjoy the show.
On this installment of the Dark Waters channel, we present to you 10 true horror stories from the aftermath of Hurricane Katrina. These 10 true horror stories were handpicked to take you on a journey into the darkness that descended upon the city of New Orleans during and after Hurricane Katrina. These stories will challenge you mentally, spiritually, and emotionally, allowing you to live the events of those dark days. The Dark Waters channel now presents 10 Hurricane Katrina stories. Part 1, featuring Mr. X Dreams.
We were staged in the Gulf of Mexico on an aircraft carrier when I initially arrived to Louisiana. My job was to escort a priest, Father Michael, into the city so that he could administer the last rites to the multitudes of dead that were being found in the city of New Orleans. You see, the Archdiocese of New Orleans was completely wiped out, so priests were being flown in from across the United States to help with the deceased and pray for survivors. We took off just before sunrise, headed into New Orleans. As we got closer to the city, Father Michael began to squirm and twist in his seat, as if he was uncomfortable inside his own skin. He clutched to his silver crucifix in his hand so hard that his knuckles began to turn white. Then he slowly started to mumble, Take me back. I can't go any further. Take me back. Father Michael quickly reached over one of the soldiers and tried to open the door to the helicopter while we were in midair. For that, he received the elbow in the chest, accompanied by an evil look. He retreated and sat there between the two armed men with tears in his eyes. Then Father Michael began to break down. Please turn around. Please turn this helicopter around. Can you feel it? He stared out of the window as he spoke. I can feel the evil in this city pulling at my soul. There's a darkness here. The devil and his children are deep at work. Take me back, please. There is pure evil here. Please take me back. None of us had ever seen a man of the cloth react in such a way. It was spooky and frightening at the same time. But the priest was serious. So we turned the helicopter around and took him back to the aircraft carrier. After speaking with his boss, the head priest, we all boarded the helicopter again and headed back to the city. The ride back was full of laughs. I must admit, we did tease Father Michael a bit. But when we landed, I quickly realized that what he said was the truth. The stuff that was happening in New Orleans was pure evil.
At the time of Hurricane Katrina, I held a management position at the Hyatt Hotel in downtown New Orleans. The hotel is adjacent to the Superdome, where many of the people were held for over a week until they were evacuated. Contrary to popular belief, the levees didn't break during the storm. It was the morning after that the water came rushing into the city. The stories I'm going to share with you are not for the faint of heart, and if you are easily offended, you should stop listening now. I was not aware of what was being shown on TV while the city was flooded. We were too busy dealing with people trying to find safety. However, I do remember when the military contractors arrived. These men and women were something straight out of a movie. Hardcore, combat tested, killing machines. We had been having a problem in the hotel with a man molesting and raping women while they were sleeping. He was breaking into rooms and doing some of the most horrible things you could imagine. The Hyatt had backup generators for the first few days of the storm that allowed people to move about with some light, but once they failed because of lack of fuel, things went straight to hell. Every hallway was dark, and the stairwells were deadly. The contractors searched the hotel floor by floor and room by room until they found him. Once he was identified by two of the victims, he was walked out of the side access door and we never saw him again. I won't say that they killed him, but the chances that he ran away were very slim. That same day, I went along with 3 of them to Gentilly, a section of the city where my house was. I wanted to see if I could salvage anything from my place, relatively safe and isolated from the horrors of the outdoor in the hotel. I had absolutely no idea of the real condition of the city. We had only made it about a mile in the boat when we ran into the first dead body, a young child floating in the water, no more than 12 years old. His body was bloated and swollen from the gases inside. A chunk of his leg was missing from some type of animal bite. On the rooftops were people everywhere begging for help. One man was standing on his roof pointing to the water. "Sharks! Sharks!" he shouted. When I looked over, I saw 3 sharks swimming down the street. We traveled further. The sounds of people asking for help to this day still torture me. A woman on the roof cried out, "Help! My baby is sick. Just take him with you." The contractors looked at me, saying it was my decision. What was I supposed to do with a baby? I could barely feed myself. I decided to ignore her. We were passing the prison when we saw 2 men with guns elevated on the steps of the courthouse. They crouched down to hide, I guess expecting to ambush us and take the boat. The guys I was with simply lit the area up with gunfire. No questions, no second thoughts. For 3 minutes straight they lit up the area. I saw the men scramble away, jumping from the steps into the water, and we sped past them in the boat. At that time, I was completely over the idea of going to my house. Screw that. We arrived at Broad Street to find bloated dead bodies floating around everywhere. The smell was nauseating. I had seen enough. I began to wonder how many people did I know that were floating around the streets, and I asked to go back. When we arrived at the hotel, I could only sit there. I cannot tell you the words to describe how the city felt. The smell of chemicals and death. Many people claim to know what disaster is, but until you live through something like that, you have no clue.
Wait, there is one more story I would like to share with you from my time stranded at the hotel. Nighttime was the worst for everyone. We all tend to take for granted the simple things in life, like food, clean water, and working lights. However, it's the life that makes you feel safe. If you find yourself without light for an extended period of time, everything becomes frightening. Imagine this. The day after I ventured out with a team of contractors, rumors began to spread about the things happening at the Superdome, which was less than 1 block away from the hotel. Now, rumors during a disaster, as I would learn later that night, should be treated as actual facts. See, you have no way of knowing what's true and what's not true. We got word that there were gangs of men roaming the area of the Superdome with guns. A little unknown secret was that ammunition was scarce during Katrina. Somehow, the criminals had managed to get much more ammunition than the National Guard soldiers that were there. Word was that they were going to come to the hotel and try and occupy the rooms. And this occupation was going to happen by force. So far, I have neglected to explain some things to you. You see, one face of the hotel was littered with broken windows. This was the side of the hotel that faced the corner of Poydras and Loyola Avenue, the east side. The western side did not have as much damage as there were other buildings to shelter the windows from the wind. So essentially, the eastern wing of the hotel was completely unsecured and could easily be infiltrated if a person desired to. I had to meet with several of the contractors who stayed in the hotel and asked that they patrol the eastern section. They agreed to leave 2 men behind to patrol the bottom 2 floors of the eastern section. That night, things were very quiet in the hotel. So quiet that it made me very nervous. The majority of the contractors had gone out into the night to do what they were hired to do. I choose not to share that information as I prefer not to get shot. However, there was supposed to be at least 2 men patrolling the eastern corridors. And of course, it was my job to check on them and see if they needed anything. So I mustered all the courage I could, grabbed my 9mm, and headed over to that section of the hotel. It was 11:47 p.m. I will never forget the time because the glow of my digital watch was the only thing that provided me any light to see by. Walking the dark halls of the eastern wing of the hotel was one of the most frightening things I had done in my life. The hotel had thousands of broken windows, and the wind blew through them, creating this constant low moaning and whistling sound. That, combined with the flapping of the curtains in the windows, left me completely unnerved. In the hallway, the majority of the doors were closed, but towards the end of the hall, I knew at least one or two of them were open. I could feel a strong breeze blowing through the hallway as it created a tunneling effect, the air pushing against my chest. Halfway down the hall, I heard one of the doors open. Again, with no light other than that from my digital watch, I began to freak out. Was it one of the contractors or someone else? Man, to be real with you, I was not just scared, I was terrified. The funny thing is, when you're truly scared, you forget that you have a weapon. The 9mm I had with me might as well have been a loaf of bread at that point. Somehow, I pressed on, not wanting to say anything and alert the possible bad guys to my presence or accidentally get shot by the contractors. I just walked slowly to the end of the hall. When I got to the stairwell door, something told me, look behind me. I turned my head, and through the darkness, I could make out three silhouettes slowly moving down the hallway towards me. It was not the contractors for sure. It's only two of them. Panicking, I quickly pushed open the door to the stairwell, and the sound it made was this loud creaking and squeaking noise. I knew at that moment I had given my position away. So I bolted up the steps to the second floor, out the door, and into the hallway. Sprinting down the hallway as fast as I could, I saw a blinding light come from ahead of me. In such darkness, that kind of light is disturbing. Then it went off. "What you running for, G?" asked one of the contractors. Breathing heavily, I managed to say, "Chased. First floor. Intruders." He whistled, and there was a reply from both ends of the hallway. Then he said, "If shit goes left, keep your head down and get into one of the rooms." By now, you can hear movement coming from the stairwell that I had just exited, followed by the door slowly opening. The next few seconds were quiet as the dark figures made their way out of the door and into the hallway. I couldn't make out everything they said, but for sure, I heard them say, "We're going to find that motherfucker." After that, things erupted. The guy in front of me turned on the tactical light he had on his gun and lit up the hallway. There were four men, two with assault rifles and two had machetes. Then the contractor said something that scared the shit out of me. He looked at him and said, "You can drop the weapon and leave. I'll walk you out. But if you don't want to walk out, we can carry you out in pieces. Legs, arms, head, hands, and torso." The words flowed out of his mouth like he was ordering coffee from Starbucks. I'm not sure if I caused what happened next, but out of fear, I opened the door to the room in an attempt to get out of the way. Then there were gunshots. I'm not sure if any of you have ever heard gunfire in a closed space like a hallway, but it's loud, deafeningly loud. But this gunfire was nothing like the gunfire on the boat. It wasn't wild and crazy. It was two successive shots. And then there was a pause. And then two more. And then two more. Inside the room, my ears were ringing so loud that it hurt. When I looked out into the hallway, the two men with the rifles were dead. And the other two men were on their knees. "What are you about to do?" I asked. Contractor replied, "Nothing. We just gonna have a talk. Then we're gonna let them go so they can deliver a message to the rest of their friends." One of the men that they had on his knees had very long dreadlocks. They asked him if anyone else was in the building. For some reason, he decided to act hard and pretended he didn't hear them. That's when they grabbed a single lock of his hair, ripping it from his skull, causing his scalp to bleed and blood to run down his face as he cried out in pain. Then they asked him again, "Do you have anybody else here with you?" He mumbled, no, there's no one else. They stood both of them up and said, "We're letting you go, so you can spread the word that the people in this hotel are protected. And if the rest of your boys come here, they will be killed." Two men scrambled away out of the door and down the steps. That was my first and last time checking the east side of the hotel. The following day, the rumor mill was in full steam about the white boys at the Hyatt killing people. That story was spread far and wide, but I was there, and I know the real deal. It was not about black and white. If it was not for those contractors, I'd have been dead that night.
It was 7 days before Hurricane Katrina when I saw something so freaky that I quit my job. At the time, I was working for a man they called Little Phil Rosito at the Jester Daiquiri shop on Bourbon Street. Every building on Bourbon Street has its ghosts, shadow people, and demons. It was about 2:30 p.m. on a Thursday. The streets were semi-packed with drunken tourists. They were all talking about the hurricane headed to New Orleans, bombarding me with the stupidest questions. Is the city really a bowl? How tall are the levees? Looking past this group of drunken pikers, I saw what looked like a huge shadow moved past the front door of the building. There's no mistaking what I saw. The building has huge doors that are always open. I quickly ran around the bar headed for the door. That's when I saw a second, very large shadow pass by. Peeping my head out looking down Bourbon Street, I could see two large shadow figures, at least 15 to 17 feet tall, shaped like men. The people on the street reacted to the shadows as they moved down the second block of Bourbon Street and disappeared into the walls of one of the strip clubs. I've been told by the other bartender about the shadow people in the buildings around Bourbon Street, but that was just too much for me to handle. I told my boss, Little Phil, what I saw. He checked out the tapes and there they were, two big shadows walking down Bourbon Street in the middle of the day. Little Phil just laughed it off and said, "Well, it is New Orleans."
As per our conversation at NDA, here's the story that we discussed. As I revealed to you, I work as a remote viewer for the United States government for many years. I decided to retire from my service to our country when there were some things that I did not agree with as a patriot of the United States. Before I tell you this story, let me explain what remote viewing is and what it is not. It's not hocus pocus magic. It is channeling of psychic energy to locate a target anywhere. By anywhere, I mean any location known and unknown to man. This story is about a private case that I was paid to consult on here in New Orleans. Ahead of time, I would like to say that the details of this case cannot be shared, but what I saw during the viewing can be. A young woman went missing on Bourbon Street 2 days before Hurricane Katrina hit. Local and state law enforcement were in no position to locate this VIP. This young lady was from a prominent DC family, so when I received the call, I knew no expense would be spared in trying to locate her. Initially, I was unable to find anything, but after a few minutes, my mind began to get some images that were very disturbing. These images I received were not like a movie, but more like still pictures that flashed in my mind. The first thing I saw was a wooded area with a large hole in the ground, with smoke billowing out of it. Then a set of tracks leading deep into this underground hole. Images of a man unnaturally large and tall with his back turned to me standing at a table. His attire was old and fashioned, and he was wearing some type of apron, which was tied behind his neck and waist. The next image I saw was a table, long and wide, covered in blood, and what looked like the intestines of a person or animal. I couldn't really tell. In his hand was a cleaver, but not a standard kitchen cleaver. This was 4 feet long, with a wooden handle, wrapped in gray duct tape. His hand rested on the table with the cleaver in his clutches. Then, for the first time ever, in all my years of doing this work, an image flashed in my mind of him looking directly at me. The entire time I was in his environment in the underground area. But this image was at my house. Him standing there before me looking directly at me. I immediately ended this session and got up, had a glass of scotch, and smoked a cigar to relax. This was confusing to me. 1, where was the girl? 2, where the hell was this place? 3, how did he know I was looking at him? In my profession, the target is always unaware of you seeing them. But he was actually aware and projected himself into my environment. This man was evil and possibly psychic. An hour later, after I rested, I focused on the girl again and found myself in the same place. Images of the table, the cleaver, but she was nowhere, and neither was he. Images of chains hanging from the ceiling with shackles, a pool of blood on the floor beneath them, then a table, an image of a table. It was neat and well kept, not a speck of dust or blood or anything, with a set of keys and a dog collar with the name Zeus and an address in Southwest Louisiana. The information was given to the state troopers. They found a house near the bayou, and inside was the most terrifying thing they had ever seen. A table with severed female body parts, hands, legs, arms. The missing girl's head was found, but nothing else. Outside in the back of the property, they found a small boat dock that extended into the wetlands, and a shack. The police surmised that he was feeding the body parts to alligators in the marsh. This is one of the most horrific remote viewing sessions I've ever done. As for the man, they caught him. He was at the vet with his dog Zeus. The trooper I spoke with said that he was 6 feet 10 inches and 345 pounds. He was a true freak of nature.
When the storm hit, I was at home in Michoud, a small suburb outside of New Orleans. The waters came in so quickly that my husband and I were forced to move up the stairs, only 10 minutes after we first saw the water on the streets. He was freaking out and grabbing food, guns, and ammunition, while I stood on the stairs screaming and having a panic attack. The sound of water rushing down the streets was deafening. We thought we would be safe, but it kept getting higher and higher until we were forced to climb into the attic of the house. The thing I remember most was the smell of the water and the humidity and heat of the attic. My husband began to shoot holes in the roof with his shotgun to let fresh air into the small space, and after opening a hole large enough, we climbed out onto the roof. Looking out, it was a sea of destruction. Cars floating into houses. Dead bodies were everywhere. If that was not scary enough, when night came, you could feel the evil and death in the air. Our neighbor from around the corner, Quinn Nguyen, had a boat and passed by saying he was going to Walmart in search for food. He had no weapon and asked my husband to join him. Instead, he gave him one of his shotguns, and we watched him move off into the darkness. Throughout the night, gunshots could be heard, along with yells and screams. But there was one scream that stood out above the rest. It was unnatural and didn't sound human. The sound made the hair stand up on the back of my neck, and my husband didn't sleep that first night. The next morning, Quinn came back with some bottles of water, cookies, brownies, canned tuna, and pickles. He climbed onto the roof and told us about the madness that was going on, the death, the murders he saw at the Walmart. He said he saw a woman who was walking on the water, in all gray. Her face was deformed, long white hair, and her breasts were sagging and exposed through her dress. She was outside of the Walmart screaming and wailing, with the most awful sound he had ever heard. He said he stayed in the store the entire night, along with 50 other people who were afraid to leave. That night, I would witness this for myself, firsthand. I can't tell you what time it was for sure, but it was well after sunset. People were on their roofs, shouting at each other. The sounds of Quinn's crank radio were so refreshing as it broke the silence and provided a small sense of normality. Then, above the talking and the radio, I heard the scream. The same scream that chilled my body the night before. And everything and everyone went silent. It was close, way closer than the previous night, and getting even closer. Looking out into the street, I could see a figure, barely visible by the light of the moon. It was moving above the surface of the water, not walking, more like gliding. Then the screams began again. My husband pulled me back down to the attic. We huddled there like two children who had just awakened from a nightmare. What was that? How was it able to move over the water? Why was it screaming? The sound still haunts me to this day.
During Hurricane Katrina, I worked search and rescue. To this day, I don't regret going to New Orleans to help the citizens of the United States of America. But what I experienced has stained me. Once your eyes have been opened to the true evil of this world, you are never the same person again. My name is Chico, and the two stories that I will share with you are only two of many. In the days after Hurricane Katrina, my job was to search for and rescue survivors. Myself and two other SAR officers were assigned an airboat. Airboats were used because they allowed travel on water and for short distances on land. Another advantage of the airboat was that there was no propeller in the water to get caught on debris, leaving you stranded. I have conducted search and rescue operations all over the world, but what I saw in New Orleans, I have never seen anywhere before. I arrived into the city via helicopter and was taken to the staging area, where multiple crews worked 12 to 15-hour shifts searching for survivors. All shift began at 11 p.m., and myself and two other SAR officers departed the staging area in the Lower Ninth Ward, praying that we will find people alive. There are no words strong enough to verbally describe the destruction that besieged the city of New Orleans. As we ventured out, the floodwaters were 12 feet high, littered with debris of all types, large and small. Navigating the area was beyond difficult. There were shipping containers, boats, cars, and even houses floating through what used to be the streets of New Orleans. The dead bodies of men, women, and children were everywhere. Survivors were clinging on to anything that they could to stay afloat. That night, as we rescued a woman, she told us we needed to start checking refrigerators and freezers because people were using them as life rafts. Hours later, just before sunrise, we spotted a refrigerator lodged between two cars. There were legs hanging out of it, with the lid closed on top of them. Approaching this refrigerator, I just knew the person inside was dead. We had found 3 times more dead people than alive, and I was preparing myself for the worst. When I lifted the lid, there was a man inside, drinking a bottle of water. He smiled and said, "Thank God you found me." As we pulled him onto the boat, his eyes darted left and right. Then he pointed to a deep freezer that was floating alongside one of the houses and said, "Hey, check that freezer. Yesterday there were 3 kids inside. I could hear them talking, but last night they went silent. Maybe they got out." We hurried over to the deep freezer and I reached down and opened the lid. The contents still haunt me to this day. Inside there were 3 little boys. They were between 6 and 12 years old, all dead. The lid must have closed on them overnight, and they suffocated to death. That was a terrible moment for me personally, as I remember seeing that deep freezer 2 times. I never once thought to check inside.
I will never forget how the events around Hurricane Katrina affected my life. I worked for a tow truck company that had roadside assistance contracts with both State Farm Insurance and Allstate. In 2005, I lived in Beaumont, Texas. We were receiving calls for everything from flat tires to cars that ran out of gas. It was 24 hours before the storm was set to land when I was called out to the area of Deweyville, a city that sits on the Texas and Louisiana state line. The dispatcher said that the people had gotten off I-10 to avoid traffic and ran out of gas on Louisiana 12, near Sabine River. It was a 30-minute ride from my last call, and it was going to get dark soon, so I floored it and arrived in the area well before sundown. I crossed the 2-lane bridge on Louisiana 12, searching for their vehicle, a red Nissan Sentra. The dispatcher clearly said they had gas trouble and that they were within 1 mile of the bridge. I found the car 300 yards away from the Texas border, but no one was inside. Deciding to take a look on foot, I found tracks leading from the passenger side door going north into the woods. 30 feet into the wood line, I was able to pick up a second footprint, a men's tennis shoe. I started to get a very bad feeling. My heart was feeling this pressure that I'd never felt before, but I kept looking 200 and 300 feet deeper into the woods. I found 2 sets of clothes, both folded neatly on top of a tree stump. The tracks moved from that point, 20 feet north toward the river, and then stopped. Confused, I got back to my truck and radioed the dispatcher and told her to contact the police and report them missing. I'm so ashamed to admit that I never really followed up on what happened to those people. It was a stressful time. There really is no good excuse for it. I regret the decision I made not to do more to look for these people, but something was wrong, very wrong that day. Truthfully, I was scared. One of the most overlooked aspects of Hurricane Katrina was the evacuation process before the storm hit. My family left New Orleans 2 days before the storm landed, and it took 24 hours before we were able to get to Houston, Texas. The traffic was horrific. Millions of people in their cars on the road, trying to get away. That is the background of my encounter. We were on the road outside of Slidell, Louisiana. I was 12 years old, and after hours in traffic I had to pee. Since we were in a bushy area, my father decided to stop the car and let me pee in the bushes. I got out and walked away from the car, maybe about 15 feet into the bushes. Then I started to relieve myself. I felt a fear I've never felt since. I had the distinct sense that I was being watched. I looked at a certain bush which had long grass, and I could see glowing yellow eyes looking back at me. As I looked at the eyes, a creature stood up to reveal that it was taller than the long grass. I didn't really see what the body looked like, but I could see the outline of its head. It had pointy ears in the shape of a German shepherd's. I quickly ran back to the car, peeing myself a little, and jumped onto my mother's lap. She asked me what was wrong, but I didn't say anything. Clearly no one in the car saw what I saw. I decided to keep my mouth shut. It was years later, as I was watching a movie called Dog Soldiers, that I finally recognized what I saw. I asked a workmate of mine, who grew up in the area, about such things, and he told me of legends of some sort of creature with the head of a wolf.
I was saved from the roof of my house on the fourth day after Katrina hit, placed on a bus, and shipped to Nashville, Tennessee, where the wonderful people of that city embraced me. I was given an apartment to stay in rent-free for 6 months to allow me time to get back on my feet and start working again. The apartment was extremely nice and nestled along the Cumberland River. This was the first time I had ever stayed outside of the city of New Orleans for any serious length of time, and definitely the first time I lived among such a diverse group of people. That's the background of my encounter. I'm in Nashville in an upper middle class white neighborhood. What stood out to me is the number of children who played at the park across the street from my apartment. The sound of kids at play was something I was very familiar with, but these kids sounded much more happy than the ones back home in New Orleans. Saturday evenings were always lively. The sounds of kids playing was almost overwhelming, but in a good way. There was a knock at my door, which I figured was the maintenance man who was supposed to come install a new dishwasher. I opened the door, not thinking or really paying attention, and said, "Hey, come on in." Walking from the door into the kitchen, I got a feeling. You know the feeling you get when your body tells you something is wrong? Hair standing on the back of your neck, chills down your spine, hands trembling. It was worse than that. This was a sensation of fear, primal fear. All of a sudden, I wanted to run and hide, and everything inside of me said, "Don't turn around." But I had to. I had to look and see what was scanning me like this. Imagine my surprise when I turned to see a little girl at my door. Blue jeans, a Gap t-shirt, her head down, and hair covering her face. For a second, I felt relieved and safe. I said, "Hey, darling, you okay?" Now 10 feet away from her, with the front door still open, she raised her head, displaying her face and eyes. Her face was pale grayish white color, and her eyes were black, completely black. What had I just invited into my house? The look of those solid black eyes were like nothing I've ever seen. As I was thinking to move to slam the door in her face, she smiled, almost as if she could read my mind. She stepped into the apartment, closing the door behind her. This was all too much for my brain to process, and I fainted. When I woke, I was still on the kitchen floor, and it was dark outside. Initially, I thought it was a dream, but I felt sick, and there was a harsh smell in the apartment, like sulfur. I pulled myself off of the floor and searched the apartment. Thought to myself, what the fuck? Confused, decided to take a shower and try and figure out what the hell just happened. The shower didn't help me relax. Actually, my blood felt like it was beginning to boil inside of me. And even though I was in the shower, my skin had this nauseating odor that reminded me of old pennies. The sickening feeling began to make my body weary, so I decided to call it a night. I was jolted out of my sleep by an unnerving feeling. My eyes were still blurry. I was still a bit disoriented in the darkness of my unlit room. I looked over at a digital clock to see what time it was. I could barely make out the time. 3 a.m. As I tried to gather my bearings, I noticed a black silhouette at the door of my room. Who was it? Was I dreaming? My questions were answered immediately when I made eye contact with the little girl as she approached the foot of my bed. Her eyes like two black holes sunk deep into her head. She smiled as she reached out, touching my foot, and then disappeared before my eyes. Since that night, I have been in and out of the hospital with various illnesses. My apartment began to experience strange paranormal activity. Things like objects being moved, doors opening on their own, and the reappearance of the black-eyed girl sitting on the floor watching TV. My most recent diagnosis is necrosis of the foot. And yes, it's the same foot that she touched.